Chapter 178. After Ji Tianqing's persuasion, Ji Ku finally made up her mind to join the spiritual medicine hall. After the discussion, Ji Tianqing gave her 5 Aquarius spirit fruits to help her recuperate. After that, Ji Tianqing left the spiritual medicine hall and returned to the Fengyun courtyard. Night had fallen and it was time to light the lanterns. The Fengyun courtyard was quiet and there were no lights on in the disciples' rooms. Ji Tianqing guessed that those disciples must be in secluded cultivation. They must be working hard in order to prepare for the Dragon Mountain tournament. After returning to his room, he entered the secret chamber and started cultivating in seclusion. His goal was to refine the 9th sword vein and break through to the mystic comprehending realm. Although the 9th level of the true energy realm was only 1 step away from the mystic comprehending realm, the gap was huge. True energy realm martial artists could only infuse their true energy into their palms or weapons to form palm shadows and sword radiance. True energy could not leave their bodies. But mystic comprehending realm martial artists were different. Their true energy was more vigorous and could condense into a substance. For example, a fist radiance condensed from true energy could be released from their fists or sword radiance condensed from true energy. They could attack and kill from a distance and were more powerful. Furthermore, mystic comprehending realm martial artists could release their true energy outside their body and condense it into a shield to protect themselves from fatal injuries. Of course, this method consumed a lot of true energy. Even experts above the 5th level of the true energy realm would not use it easily. In addition, mystic comprehending realm martial artists could condense their thoughts into spiritual consciousness. The soul sense was formless and intangible, invisible and untouchable, but it had all kinds of unexpected magical uses. Ji Tianqing calculated in his heart, with my current strength and sword heart path, I can unleash the combat power of a 3rd-level mystic comprehending realm martial artist. If I use the Black Dragon sword, I can defeat a 4th-level mystic comprehending realm martial artist. I'm only at the 9th level of the true energy realm, but I already have such powerful combat power. If I can break through to the mystic comprehending realm, my combat power will increase by several times. At that time, I can even defeat a 5th-level mystic comprehending realm martial artist. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with anticipation. His desire to reach Tongxian realm grew even stronger. He sat cross-legged in the middle of the spirit-gathering array, circulating the 3rd level of the path of the sword. He absorbed the yuan qi of heaven and earth and refined the sword vein with all his strength. In order to speed up his cultivation, he also took 4 spirit fruits and 5 true elemental dawn. This was half of his monthly allowance. If he used it for his daily cultivation, it could last him for at least 10 days. Ji Tianqing focused on cultivating. With the help of the spirit fruits and pills, he continued to refine the 9th sword vein. As time passed, his 9th dark red meridian gradually turned golden. At the same time, his strength was also growing silently, constantly becoming stronger. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days passed. After a total of 5 days, Ji Tianqing had completely refined the medicinal efficacy of the spirit fruit and pills. However, he was still unable to refine the 9th sword vein. 2/3 of his 9th meridian had turned golden, and the remaining 1/3 was still dark red. Ji Tianqing wanted to refine the sword vein in one go, so he took all the remaining pills in the 100 treasures brocade pouch. A few spirit fruits, true elemental dawn, and a mystic gold secret elixir all burst forth with boundless essence energy in his body, surging like a river. Ji Tianqing silently endured the impact of the boundless medicinal efficacy and continued to refine the 9th sword vein. Unknowingly, another 2 days passed. At this point, he had been cultivating in seclusion for 7 days. He had also used up all the spirit fruits, pills, and other resources he had. Fortunately, his efforts were greatly rewarded. The 9th meridian finally turned pure gold, successfully refining into a sword vein. Now, Ji Tianqing's 9 main meridians had all become sword veins. The true elemental dawn in his body also went berserk, surging like a torrential flood in the sword vein. When the true elemental dawn surged wildly, it actually gave off a faint rumbling sound, like rolling thunder. Ji Tianqing knew that the critical moment had arrived. He had already reached the limit of true elemental realm level 9 and was about to break through the bottleneck to the mystic comprehending realm. For an ordinary true elemental realm martial artist, the true elemental dantian would condense into a cyclone and spin continuously. After reaching the mystic comprehending realm, the true elemental dantian cyclone would condense into liquid true elemental dawn and become elemental dawn. Ji Tianqing's situation was different. He did not have a dantian, only a sword embryo. Currently, his sword embryo was a small golden sword. It was just a shadow of a golden sword. However, he had reached the limit of the true elemental realm. The boundless true elemental dawn in the 9 sword veins madly converged into the sword embryo. The golden sword shadow contained an endless amount of true elemental dawn and became more and more solid, gradually turning into a substantial golden sword. This process was the transition from the true elemental realm to the mystic comprehending realm. Ordinary martial artists condense their true elemental dawn into water droplets, but for Ji Tianqing, the sword embryo shadow condensed into a substantial form. Time flew by, and the night passed quickly. The sword embryo shadow finally completed its transformation and completely turned into a substantial golden sword. At the same time, his willpower also completed its transformation and condensed into spiritual awareness. Ji Tianqing had finally broken through to the mystic comprehending realm. At this moment, he was a little excited, and a gratified expression appeared on his face. He circulated his qi and regulated his breathing for another hour before he ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. This is great. It's finally done. I have completed the 3rd level of the path of the sword. I have finally broken through to the mystic comprehending realm. In order to confirm this result, he walked to the corner of the secret room and pressed his hand on the psychic pillar's veins. A boundless amount of elemental dawn burst forth from his palm. The black veins on the psychic pillar immediately lit up with a golden glow. The golden glow represented the mystic comprehending realm. When one of the veins lit up, it represented the 1st level of the mystic comprehending realm. Ji Tianqing retracted his hand with satisfaction and muttered softly, "I have reached the mystic comprehending realm. Next, I will have to cultivate the 4th level of the path of the sword to continue improving my strength. It's time to take a look at the Kenshin tomb." He sat cross-legged in the secret room and focused his willpower on the black hole behind the sword embryo. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing's willpower entered the Kenshin tomb and came to a dark and cold space. He floated in the sky above the wasteland. After making sure of the direction, he floated forward. In a short while, he arrived at the bottom of the towering sword steel. He could feel that the gigantic, pitch-black sword steel had become more powerful and domineering. The spirit qi surrounding the sword steel had also become more boundless. Obviously, the sword soul in the burial of heaven had gained a lot from devouring the witch and the high priest's powers. Ji Tianqing sized up the sword steel and walked toward the tombstones on the left side of the sword steel. He walked closer to the tombstone and saw that the words on the 3rd tombstone had disappeared. Just like before, the words on the 3rd tombstone disappeared after I completed the 3rd level of the path of the sword. He muttered to himself. He looked at the 4th tombstone and carefully observed the 4th level of the path of the sword. Soon, he understood the gist of the 4th level of the path of the sword. He needed to temper the 72 acupoints in his body. He memorized the words on the tombstone and left the Kenshin tomb. Chapter 179. At the peak of Red Cloud Peak, Sky Pillar Hall. It was early in the morning, and Sect Master Chu Tiansheng was discussing matters with the elders in the hall. Chu Tiansheng sat on the throne at the head of the hall, listening to the elders' reports with a dignified expression. After the elders of the various halls finished their reports, he gave the corresponding opinions and gave a few orders after careful consideration. It didn't take long for the meeting to end, and all the elders took their leave. Once all the elders had left, the outer sect elder Chu Huaishan stayed behind. Chu Tiancheng's gaze fell on him and he asked, "Elder Chu, you stayed behind alone. Do you have something to report?" Chu Huaishan cupped his hands and nodded, "Yes, this subordinate has something important to report to sect master." Early this morning, the Tianjian sect's outer sect deacon arrived with 3 disciples. This subordinate has already arranged for them to stay in Green Pine Courtyard. Chu Tiancheng raised his eyebrows and nodded slightly, "That's good. Elder Chu, you are in charge of this matter. Treat them well and don't damage the reputation of our Sky Pillar sect. In addition, send someone to secretly keep an eye on them. Don't let them cause any trouble or disturbances." "Understood." Chu Huaishan cupped his hands and accepted the order. After hesitating for a moment, he couldn't help but ask, "The Tianjian sect's master suddenly proposed to send a disciple to our sect for an exchange. Sect master, you clearly guessed that the Tianjian sect was up to no good and had other plans. Why did you agree to this matter?" Chu Tiancheng's lips curled into a playful smile, and he said in a dignified tone, "That's right. This king and the Tianjian sect's master have been dealing with each other for hundreds of years. Of course, I know that his ambitions are not small and that he has other plans. But today is different from the past. In the past 3 years, the Tianjian sect has occupied Dragon Mountain and seized a large amount of cultivation resources. They have developed and grown very quickly. The Tianjian sect's people went to the Yong'an region to recruit geniuses from all over the world. It is said that they have discovered another top genius this year. Since the Tianjian sect's master sent a new disciple to show off, this king wants to see how talented the Tianjian sect's newly recruited top genius is." Chu Huaishan quickly took out a list of names from his sleeve and handed it over to Chu Tiancheng. "Sect leader, this is the information on the 3 genius disciples of the Tianjian sect. Please take a look. I've secretly observed that the 3 disciples who came to our sect for the exchange this time are all young people with outstanding aptitude. Their strength has reached the mystic comprehending realm, and they all came from the Yong'an region." Seeing Chu Tiancheng looking down at the register, Chu Huaishan took the initiative to introduce, "The names of these 3 disciples are Hang Chen, Ran Donglai, and Yin Feiyang. Ran Donglai's strength has reached LV2 Tongxian realm. He was born in the Yong'an region's aristocratic family of swordsmanship. Yin Feiyang's strength has reached LV3 Tongxian realm. He was born in the royal family of a kingdom in the Yong'an region. As for Hang Chen, he's the strongest and has already reached the 5th level of the mystic enlightening stage. His talent is also the most outstanding. He is the top genius that the Tianjian sect has discovered this year." According to this subordinate's investigation, Hang Chen was originally a disciple of a third-rate sect in the Yong'an region, but he was not welcomed in the sect and was ostracized and suppressed everywhere. Hearing this, Chu Tiancheng raised his eyebrows. Obviously, he was interested. He put down the register in his hand and looked at Chu Huaishan with interest. Since Hang Chen is a top genius, why is he in a third-rate sect? Why is he ostracized and suppressed everywhere? Chu Huaishan hurriedly explained, that third-rate sect mainly studies array Dao. However, the number of experts in the sect has withered, and many other sects have secretly ostracized and attacked them. The territory and resources they own are getting smaller and smaller, and they are on the verge of disbandment and extinction. Hang Chen has the fighting sword bloodline, and his talent in swordsmanship is extremely outstanding. However, his talent in array Dao is very mediocre and can even be called stupid. Moreover, he has a murderous aura and is extremely aggressive. He often beats up and humiliates the disciples in the sect, which is why he is ostracized and suppressed by his peers. Since he can't bully the disciples in the sect, Hang Chen causes trouble outside the sect and fights with the disciples of other sections. Because of this, Hang Chen made many enemies of the third-rate sect. In the end, the other sects found an excuse to join forces and destroy the third-rate sect. Hearing this, even Chu Tiansheng, the sect leader, couldn't help but frown and reveal a playful smile. A mere disciple at the 5th level of the Tongxian realm can bring disaster to the sect. This man is a star of misfortune. Chu Huaishan shook his head and said with a serious expression, "Sect master, Hang Chen has the fighting sword bloodline, but he joined a third-rate array sect. This is like casting pearls before swine. It will delay his cultivation time. In the third-rate sect, his talent can't be developed and cultivated, so he became a star of misfortune. However, the Tianjian sect is very powerful. Unlike that third-rate sect, it can accommodate Hang Chen and cultivate him into a top genius." Chu Tiansheng smiled and nodded. That's true. Martial arts geniuses always have all kinds of eccentricities and are different from ordinary people. Only a large sect can tolerate and control them. Elder Chu, please continue. Chu Huaishan continued, after that third-rate sect was destroyed, Hang Chen not only escaped from the siege, but also stole the sect's treasures and fled in the Yong'an region to avoid being hunted down. It just so happened that the Tianjian sect went to the Yong'an region to recruit new disciples. Hang Chen found an opportunity to participate in the Tianjian sect's entrance competition and won first place in the Tianjian sect. After this man entered the sect, his fighting sword bloodline was developed. The Tianjian sect not only helped him to stimulate his bloodline talent, but also gave him a lot of treasures and cultivation methods. The Tianjian sect's leader even accepted him as a disciple and personally taught him swordsmanship. Obviously, he has high hopes for him. Chu Tiansheng frowned and said in a deep voice, "The fighting sword bloodline is a rare top black level bloodline. It's even more powerful than the black sword bloodline. Almost all the geniuses of the 10 nations in the Tianshan region have joined our sect. For the Tianjian sect, a young martial artist with the fighting sword bloodline is indeed worthy of being nurtured." At the mention of the bloodline grade, Chu Huaishan smiled proudly and nodded in agreement. "Yes, most of the geniuses in the Tianshan region are in our sect. There aren't many real geniuses in the Tianjian sect. It's ridiculous that a fighting sword bloodline can make the Tianjian sect's leader accept him as a disciple. Although the fighting sword bloodline is rare, it's only a black-level bloodline. Our chief disciple, Yunyao, has the heaven-level heavenly spirit sacred body bloodline. A black-level bloodline can only give Hang Chen a 90% chance of reaching the origin core realm. But Yunyao's heavenly spirit sacred body can make her reach the heaven origin realm. Within 10 years at most, our sect will have a third heaven origin realm expert. How can the Tianjian sect compare to our sect?" Chapter 180. As long as Yunyao was mentioned, the deacons and elders of the Sky Pillar sect were full of pride. After all, she was the undisputed #1 genius of the Tianshan region. She had the legendary heavenly bloodline and divine body. She had reached the origin core stage at the age of 19. She had once defeated the elites of the 7 sects on the star platform. She also, the glory and honor Yunyao had created couldn't be described for 3 days and 3 nights. In short, she was a super genius that all the geniuses in the Tianshan region could only look up to and feel despair. Hang Chen, the new disciple of the Tianjian sect, was talented and had excellent martial arts aptitude. But compared to Yunyao, there was a difference between heaven and earth. They couldn't be compared at all. Chu Tiansheng was also proud of this. But he frowned and said in a deep voice, "Elder Chu, Hang Chen can't be compared to Yunyao. But Yunyao is the chief disciple of the Tianjian sect. Hang Chen is just a new outer disciple of the Tianjian sect. Only the disciples of the Fengyun courtyard can participate in this Longshan tournament. They must defeat Hang Chen and take back Longshan for the sect. The Tianjian sect has occupied Longshan for 3 years. In these 3 years, they have developed very quickly. We can only win this Longshan tournament. We can't lose. Chu Tiancheng's face was solemn and his tone was serious. This was a death order for Chu Huaishan. After all, this Longshan tournament was not only related to the ownership of Longshan, but also the face of the Tianjian sect. Chu Huaishan frowned and felt a little embarrassed. Sect Master, although the 10 new disciples of the Fengyun courtyard are excellent, compared to Hang Chen, I'm afraid they are still slightly inferior. The strongest disciple of the Fengyun courtyard, Lu Mingyang, is only at the first stage of the Tongxian realm. Not to mention defeating Hang Chen, it's unknown whether he can deal with Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai. Chu Tiancheng also understood this point. His face became more serious, and his eyes flashed. Deacon Han of the Fengyun courtyard, have you decided the disciples who will participate in the tournament? Chu Huaishan shook his head and said expressionlessly, I haven't decided. What instructions do you have? Chu Tiancheng's tone was solemn as he said, then let Han Xiaosheng decide on the candidates as soon as possible. Understood. Chu Huaishan could only cup his fists in salute and take his leave. He returned to the outer sect to relay his orders. In the storm courtyard, Ji Tiancheng sat in his room, pondering over the 4th level of the Sword Heart Dao. Now that he had reached Tongxian Realm Tier 1, if he wanted to raise his strength further, he would have to refine his 72 apertures. The human body had 9 main meridians. They were like 9 interconnected channels that allowed true essence to circulate and circulate. Each meridian had 8 acupoints, which were like nodes on a passageway. If the aperture acupoints were damaged or sealed, it would block the meridians and affect the flow of true essence. If the acupuncture points were tempered and strengthened, it could further strengthen the meridians and hold more Zhenyuan. Moreover, it could accelerate the flow of Zhenyuan and increase its power. Ji Tiancheng understood these principles, but he also knew that refining acupoints was much more difficult than refining meridians. After all, aperture acupoints were very small and hidden, even more fragile than meridians. If he wanted to refine aperture acupoints, he had to control his Zhenyuan to the finest detail. Just as Ji Tiancheng was lost in thought, he suddenly heard the bell ringing in the main hall. He came back to his senses and hurriedly collected his thoughts. He walked out of his room and hurried to the main hall. The disciples of the storm courtyard were all awakened and hurried to the main hall. In a short while, all 10 disciples had gathered. After 8 days of secluded cultivation, everyone's strength had obviously increased. Everyone knew that Han Xiaosheng had gathered everyone in the main hall today to decide the participants of the Dragon Mountain tournament. Thinking of this, everyone was filled with confidence and anticipation. Soon, Han Xiaosheng and Du Wu walked into the main hall and stood at the head of the table. The 2 deacons' expressions were somewhat grave, and there was a hint of worry between their brows. When the disciples noticed this, they were somewhat puzzled and had a bad premonition. Han Xiaosheng calmly swept his gaze over the crowd and said in a solemn tone, "Today, I have gathered everyone here to announce a piece of news. 3 disciples of the Tianjian sect have arrived at our sect and are now living in Pine Courtyard. Those 3 disciples have all reached the Profound Understanding realm, and the weakest disciple is at the 2nd stage of the Profound Understanding realm." Hearing this news, all the disciples were stunned, their faces full of shock. The confidence and anticipation in everyone's hearts immediately vanished and turned into shock and doubt. Several disciples couldn't help but discuss it, and some even asked Han Xiaosheng, "Deacon Han, how could this be? The 3 disciples sent by the Tianjian sect are all at the Profound Understanding realm. Then how are we going to fight? It's impossible for a Zhenyuan realm cultivator to defeat a Profound Understanding realm cultivator. Doesn't that mean our sect will lose? Shouldn't a profound understanding realm disciple enter the inner sect? Why are they still in the outer sect? Deacon Han, the Tianjian sect isn't making inner sect disciples pretend to be outer sect disciples, is it? Everyone was puzzled, and they were somewhat angry. Duwu raised his hand to signal everyone to be quiet, and explained angrily, "It's normal for you to have such doubts. The Tianjian sect is indeed suspected of cheating this time. Those 3 disciples are indeed new disciples of the Tianjian sect. They should have entered the inner sect directly, but the Tianjian sect deliberately let them stay in the outer sect for this Longshan competition." Han Qiusheng nodded and said in a dignified tone, "This is beyond my expectations. I didn't expect the Tianjian sect to be so despicable as to use such a method. Originally, I was going to choose a place to participate in the competition today. But in this case, I won't choose. Everyone is free to choose, and I won't force you. Who is willing to represent the Fengyun courtyard and participate in the Longshan competition? Please stand up." Obviously, the Tianjian sect's actions had caught Han Qiusheng off guard and made him feel helpless. Several disciples were full of indignation and cursed the Tianjian sect in a low voice, but no one took the initiative to stand up. Even Lu Mingyang, who appeared to be the strongest, was hesitant, weighing the pros and cons with a complicated expression. At this moment, Ji Tianqing calmly took 2 steps forward and stepped forward. "Deacon Han, this disciple is willing to fight for our sect." He saluted Han Qiusheng and said in a firm tone. Before Han Qiusheng could speak, the disciples saw that he had taken the initiative to fight, and immediately began to discuss. "Ji Tianqing, when you entered the sect, you were only at LV5 True Element Realm. Even if you cultivated hard for 2 months, you're still at LV7 True Element Realm at most. How can you fight against a Tongxian Realm Master? Sai, although I admire your courage, this isn't bravery. You're just asking for humiliation." Several disciples shook their heads. They didn't have the slightest bit of hope for Ji Tianqing. Nia Hao's face was also full of worry, and he hurriedly tried to dissuade him. "Brother Ji, don't be impulsive. This matter needs to be considered at length. Please recommend me." Chapter 181. While the disciples were discussing, Lu Mingyang also walked out of the crowd. He took 2 steps forward, bowed to Han Qiusheng, and said in a sonorous tone, "Deacon Han, disciple is willing to fight on behalf of our sect." Han Qiusheng nodded slightly and did not say anything. He had expected this. Among the 10 disciples of Fengyun school, Lu Mingyang was the strongest. If he did not fight, then there was no one else in Fengyun school. Lu Mingyang glanced at Ji Tianqing beside him and said contemptuously, "Ji Tianqing, only I can deal with the disciples of the Tianjian sect. You're only in the true energy realm. Don't make a fool of yourself." Although he had been beaten up by Ji Tianqing in the mother and child profound formation, he knew that Lu Mingyang was not a fool. Even if Ji Tianqing was only in the true energy realm, he could defeat a Tongxian realm master. However, only he and Ji Tianqing knew about that. Now, in front of the 2 deacons and the disciples, he had to take the opportunity to ridicule Ji Tianqing. When the disciples heard Lu Mingyang's words, they nodded in agreement. Yes, Lu Mingyang is in the Tongxian realm. Only he has a chance to defeat the disciples of the Tianjian sect. Ji Tianqing's courage is commendable, but the ending will be miserable. This is a very important matter. Ji Tianqing is too reckless. Ji Tianqing ignored the discussion of the disciples and looked at Lu Mingyang indifferently. A playful smile appeared on his face. "Lu Mingyang, have you forgotten the pain after the scar healed?" Lu Mingyang's expression suddenly changed, and the corners of his mouth twitched a few times. He was full of anger and wanted to explode, but he held it in. Ji Tianqing looked at Han Qiusheng and said seriously, "Deacon Han, just last night, disciple has successfully broken through to the Tongxian realm. Han Xiaosheng had been thinking with a dignified expression and had not made a conclusion. When he heard Ji Tianqing's words, his expression eased a lot, and a touch of relief flashed in his eyes. Very good. The disciples were surprised, and they exclaimed in disbelief and began to discuss among themselves. What? Ji Tianqing has reached the Tongxian realm? How is this possible? He was only at the 5th level of the true element stage when he entered the sect. In less than 2 months, he broke through from the 5th level of the true energy stage to the mystic comprehending stage. Isn't this too unbelievable? I don't believe this is true. How can there be a genius who can improve so quickly? Ji Tianqing, don't tell me you're lying. Are you puffing yourself up at your own cost? Everyone was shocked and incredulous, but they also had some doubts. Ji Tianqing couldn't be bothered to explain. He turned around and walked towards the psychic stone pillar in the corner of the hall. He stretched out his hand and pressed it against the stone pillar. As the majestic true essence gushed out of his palm, the black lines on the stone pillar immediately lit up with a golden light. Everyone turned their heads to look at the psychic pillar. When they saw the golden light, their expressions immediately changed. He is indeed at level 1 of Tongxian realm. Unbelievable. Ji Tianqing, this fellow is really a freak. He took first place in both the Pill Dao and Array Dao exams. Even the speed of his strength improvement is unbelievable. This guy is really a monster. Sigh, we are still trying our best to break through to the Tongxian realm for the inner sect exam in 4 months. He has already achieved his goal. The facts prove that Ji Tianqing had indeed broken through to the Tongxian realm and became one of the 2 strongest disciples in the Storm Hall. Lu Mingyang's expression was somewhat ugly. He secretly clenched his fists and pursed his lips, not saying a word. The other disciples no longer doubted Ji Tianqing. Instead, they were filled with envy and admiration. From all aspects, Ji Tianqing's talent far surpassed theirs. They could only look up to him. The disciples discussed for a while before gradually quieting down. Han Xiaosheng glanced at Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang, then looked at the remaining 8 disciples. He asked in a deep voice, only Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang are participating? 3 people are required to participate in the Dragon Mountain tournament. Who else is willing to step forward? The disciples looked at each other, their faces full of hesitation. After a while, no one took the initiative to step forward. Han Xiaosheng frowned and asked in a deep voice, only 2 disciples are participating? Isn't this letting the Tianjian sect laugh at our storm hall for having no one? The disciples' faces were full of shame. In their hearts, they hated the Tianjian sect even more. Nia Hao bowed to Han Xiaosheng and said in a serious tone, reporting to Deacon Han, it's not that we are cowards. It's just that the Tianjian sect is despicable and shameless. They caught us unprepared. Moreover, this Dragon Mountain tournament is very important. Not only is it related to the ownership of Dragon Mountain, but it is also related to the face and honor of our sect. We admit that we are no match for a Tongxian expert, so we don't dare to rashly ask for a fight. If we lose the tournament, not only will we lose Dragon Mountain, but we will also bring shame to our sect. Nia Hao's words were reasonable. They were also the thoughts of the other disciples. Everyone nodded in agreement and echoed what he said. Duwu frowned and thought for a moment, then probed Han Xiaosheng. Brother Han, since the Tianjian sect is despicable and shameless, why don't we ask the sect master for permission to transfer 1 or 2 disciples from the inner sect to the Storm Hall to represent our sect? Duwu's proposal immediately received the approval of several disciples. Han Xiaosheng thought for a moment, then shook his head and rejected the idea. Although the Tianjian sect is despicable and sinister, those 3 disciples are indeed new disciples. If they do this, our sect has nothing to say. However, if we let our inner sect disciples pretend to be outer sect disciples and represent our sect in the tournament, we will definitely be ridiculed by the Tianjian sect. They might even use this to make an issue out of it. We can't do this. Duwu asked anxiously, then what should we do? Are we really going to let Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang fight the three genius disciples of the Tianjian sect? The three of them are at the second or third level of the Tongxian stage. The strongest, Hang Chen, is said to have reached the fifth level of the Tongxian stage. Earlier, Han Xiusheng did not explain the true strength of the Tianjian sect disciples. Now that everyone heard that there was a fifth-level Tongxian stage expert among the three disciples of the Tianjian sect, they were all aghast. There's actually a fifth-level Tongxian stage expert? Heavens! How are they going to fight? With Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang's strength, I'm afraid they won't even be able to block one of their moves, right? A fifth-level Tongxian stage expert is actually still in the outer sect. The Tianjian sect is really shameless to the extreme. Lu Mingyang and Ji Tianqing are both at the first level of the Tongxian stage. They will definitely lose this battle. Dragon Mountain will be lost again. Not only were the disciples dispirited, but even Lu Mingyang's expression was unsightly and his heart was filled with worry. Only Ji Tianqing's expression did not change. His demeanor was still calm and composed. He cupped his fists and bowed to Han Xiusheng. His voice was sonorous and powerful as he said, "Deacon Han, the Tianjian sect is despicable and shameless, but our sect can't learn from them. We have to act openly and aboveboard. Please rest assured, Deacon Han. Although the three disciples of the Tianjian sect are strong, I'm not afraid. Even if I have to fight the three of them alone, I'm sure I can win." Chapter 182. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words that were filled with confidence, the expressions of the disciples became somewhat complicated. If it were before, they would have snorted disdainfully and ridiculed him on the spot. Although he had shown his talent in alchemy, array, and martial arts, making the disciples admire him. However, his words were still a little too arrogant in the ears of the crowd. Several disciples frowned, shook their heads, and discussed in low voices. Even if Ji Tianqing's talent is outstanding and I admire him, isn't he too arrogant? That's right. He just broke through to the Tongxian realm and can't even defeat experts in the second or third stage of the Tongxian realm. How can he defeat an expert in the fifth stage of the Tongxian realm? Even if he is a genius and can defeat experts in the second or third stage of the Tongxian realm with his strength in the first stage of the Tongxian realm, he can't defeat experts in the fifth stage of the Tongxian realm. Defeat opponents in the fourth stage of the Tongxian realm? I have never heard of such a thing. If he can really do it, it will be a miracle. Create a miracle? How can it be so easy? Unless he is a super genius like senior sister Yunyao. Ji Tianqing ignored the crowd's discussion and strange gazes and calmly looked at Han Xiusheng. Han Xiusheng pondered for a moment and raised his hand to signal for everyone to be quiet. With a solemn expression, he solemnly announced the final decision. I now announce that Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang will represent our sect in this Longshan tournament. Now that things have come to this, with the enemy in front of us, please put down your doubts and prejudices and work together to face this challenge. When the disciples heard this, their expressions became unnatural and their eyes revealed shame and self-blame. Indeed, the disciples of the Tianjian sect had already arrived and were living in the outer sect's pine courtyard. They were waiting to see the Fengyun courtyard make a fool of themselves. They didn't dare to stand up and fight for the sect, but they still questioned and ridiculed Ji Tianqing. This kind of behavior was despised the most. Han Xiusheng looked at Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang with a solemn expression. Ji Tianqing, Lu Mingyang, as long as you do your best and have a clear conscience, everything will be fine. No matter what the final result is, the fact that you were able to step forward at the critical moment is the pride of our sect. I am proud of all of you. The other 8 disciples suddenly looked solemn. They stared at Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang with complicated eyes. Without a doubt, the victory of the Dragon Mountain competition, the ownership of the Dragon Mountain, and the glory of the sect were all in their hands. Alright, this matter is decided. Everyone, you may leave. After Han Xiaosheng announced the results, he waved his hand, indicating for everyone to withdraw. Several disciples left the main hall one after another, and walked into the courtyard in twos and threes. They were still discussing in low voices. Ji Tianqing also walked out of the hall and walked towards his own room. At this time, Lu Mingyang followed him and stopped him under the big banyan tree in the courtyard. Ji Tianqing, wait a minute. Ji Tianqing stopped and turned to look at Lu Mingyang. He said expressionlessly, "What's the matter?" Lu Mingyang's expression was a little complicated. After hesitating for a moment, he said seriously, "There are some things that I want to talk to you about." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "What is there to talk about between us?" Lu Mingyang was a little embarrassed, but he was already mentally prepared. He said without changing his expression, "That's right. We are like fire and water. There is indeed nothing to talk about. But that's between us. There will be plenty of opportunities to settle our grudges in the future. Now that the disciples of the Tianjian sect are here, and the enemy is in front of us, I think we should put aside our prejudices and unite as one." Ji Tianqing was still expressionless. He asked, "And then?" Lu Mingyang said seriously, "Only the two of us from our sect are participating in the competition. The Tianjian sect has 3 people, and they are all stronger than us. Especially that Hang Chen. He can crush the 2 of us with one hand. No matter what, we can't win. When the time comes, we will lose miserably and become a laughingstock. We will become sinners of our sect. Everyone is well aware of this. What are you trying to say?" Ji Tianqing could see that Lu Mingyang definitely had other intentions. Sure enough, after looking around and seeing that there was no one around, Lu Mingyang lowered his voice and said, "Ji Tianqing, if you don't want to become a laughingstock and become a sinner who will lose the honor of Dragon Mountain and the sect, then you might as well listen to my advice. Let's go find the outer sect elders and ask Elder Chu to think of a way to give us some powerful equipment or elixirs that can quickly increase our strength. Right now, the 2 of us are the hope of the outer sect. The outcome of this competition and the sect's honor and disgrace all depend on us. We can take this opportunity to ask Elder Chu for help. He will definitely understand and will not refuse." After saying that, Lu Mingyang stared at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze. His eyes contained expectations. He believed that Ji Tianqing would definitely not let go of such an excellent opportunity to ask for treasures and resources from the sect in a justifiable manner. However, Ji Tianqing had a playful smile on his face, and his tone was somewhat mocking. "He, as expected of the Crown Prince of Chongfeng Nation. Born in the royal family, you are born to be good at taking advantage of others. Taking this opportunity to ask Elder Chu for treasures, what's the difference between this and taking advantage of the situation?" Seeing Lu Mingyang's unnatural expression, he shouted in a deep voice, "Lu Mingyang, if you want to take advantage of the situation, then go ahead. No one will stop you. But I will never do such a thing, and I don't need it at all. Even if you are afraid of death, I can finish the competition alone. I can still take back Dragon Mountain and save the sect's face." After leaving these 2 sentences, Ji Tianqing turned around and was about to leave. Looking at his back, Lu Mingyang was so angry that his face turned cold. He clenched his fists so hard that his knuckles cracked. "Ji Tianqing. You are too arrogant. You will definitely regret it." Ji Tianqing ignored him. He stepped to the door and was about to enter the room. But at this moment, Emo suddenly ran into the yard from the gate. He shouted with a bad expression, "Brothers, come out quickly. Something happened." Hearing Emo's shout, those disciples who had just returned to their rooms opened their doors and rushed out. Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang also turned around to look at Emo. They did not know what had happened. Soon, 6 or 7 disciples came to the yard. They surrounded Emo and asked him what had happened. Emo hurriedly explained, "Just now I passed by the outer court square and saw many outer court disciples gathered there. I thought something had happened, so I went closer to take a look. It turned out that 3 disciples of the Tianjian sect went to the square early in the morning to practice swordsmanship, which attracted many disciples' attention." Speaking of this, he was a little indignant. He shouted angrily in a low voice, "The disciples of the Tianjian sect have gone too far. They just entered our sect today, but they practiced martial arts in the square in public. And they even put on a posture of pointing at the world. This is definitely a show of strength and a naked provocation to our Fengyun courtyard." Chapter 183. These 3 Tianjian sect disciples actually dared to be so arrogant on their first day at the Sky Pillar sect. The Tempest Courtyard was the face of the outer sect. The actions of these 3 Tianjian sect disciples were undoubtedly provoking the Tempest Courtyard. As this matter concerned the honor of the Tempest Courtyard, several disciples were filled with righteous indignation and decided to go to the square to take a look. Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang were the backbone of the Tempest Courtyard. Several disciples clustered around them and rushed to the outer sect square. Before long, everyone arrived at the outer sect square. While still at the edge of the square, Ji Tianqing and the others saw that nearly 200 outer sect disciples had gathered in the center of the square. They were crowded in a circle. There was an empty space in the middle of the crowd that was about 20 meters in radius. When Ji Tianqing and the others arrived at the center of the square, they saw 3 young men in green robes standing on the empty ground. The robes of these 3 people were different from the robes of the Sky Pillar sect's outer sect disciples. There was a symbol of a treasured sword embroidered on their chests. Obviously, these 3 people were the disciples sent by the Tianjian sect to the Sky Pillar sect for an exchange. 2 of them were elegant. They looked talented and exuded a confident and vigorous aura. The 2 of them were holding treasured swords in their hands and displaying sword techniques. They constantly swung their swords, causing dazzling cold light to fill the sky. The smooth and flowing sword techniques, the gorgeous and dazzling sword light, and the 2 people's clothes fluttering in the wind, caused many outer sect disciples to applaud and cheer. Most of the outer sect disciples didn't know about the Dragon Mountain tournament. They only knew that the geniuses of the Tianjian sect had come to the Sky Pillar sect for an exchange and everyone was learning from each other. Seeing that the 2 Tianjian sect disciples were indeed extraordinary. Their attainments in the Tao of the sword were superb, and they had the demeanor of experts. Naturally, their hearts swayed and they were full of admiration. Only a small number of disciples realized that something was wrong. They looked at the 2 disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect coldly and whispered to each other in low voices. Of the 3 disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect, 2 of them were swinging their swords and sparring with each other. The 3rd person stood proudly in the center of the square and was the most eye-catching. This person had a tall and robust figure. He had a pair of large copper bell eyes, dark red skin, and his entire body emanated an unruly and overbearing aura. He carried a huge blood-colored heavy sword on his back, his arms crossed in front of his chest, and he stood there with an arrogant expression. That blood-red heavy sword was about 1.5 meters long and as wide as a bench. Just from its appearance, one could tell that it was extraordinarily powerful and had a murderous aura. This person did not display any sword techniques, nor did he speak. In fact, he didn't even have the interest to look at the others. His attitude was cold and arrogant. Ji Tianqing, Lu Mingyang, and the others immediately guessed that this person was most likely Hang Chen, a 5th-layer Tongxian realm genius. A moment later, the 2 disciples who were sparring stopped at the same time. The 2 of them put away their swords and bowed to the surrounding disciples. They smiled and said, I'm Ran Donglai. Please excuse my incompetence. I'm Yin Feiyang. Please excuse me. The two of them exchanged some pleasantries and then put their swords back into the scabbard on their backs. Ran Donglai smiled and said, Senior brothers and sisters, what Senior Brother Yin and I displayed just now was one of our sect's unique sword techniques, the 7 killing swordsmanship. This time, Senior Brother Yin, Senior Brother Heng, and I are here to exchange pointers under the orders of our sect. We're here to visit the top sect in Tianshan territory and exchange pointers with our senior brothers and sisters of the 1,000-year-old ancient sect. Senior Brother Yin and I are not talented. We've only been in the sect for 2 months, and we've barely learned the 7 killing swordsmanship. Please give us some pointers. Although Ran Donglai said that he wanted everyone to give him pointers, his tone and posture were very modest and polite. However, Ji Tianqing and the others could see that Ran Donglai's eyes contained a hint of arrogance. He and Yin Feiyang had practiced the 7 killing swordsmanship, but their main purpose was not to exchange pointers with the outer disciples. The surrounding disciples were basically all below LV7 true element realm. Who was qualified to give Ran Donglai and Yin Feiyang pointers? Sure enough, after hearing Ran Donglai's words, the surrounding disciples began to discuss among themselves. They are indeed the genius disciples of the Tianjian sect. They have the demeanor of a disciple of a big sect. The two senior brothers' swordsmanship is so exquisite, and their attitudes are so modest. It's really admirable. Senior Brother Ran is too modest. Your attainments in sword techniques are far beyond our reach. We can't wait to admire you. Who can give you pointers? Most of the disciples were impressed by Ran Donglai and Yin Feiyang's charm. They felt that not only were their strength profound, their swordsmanship exquisite, but they were also very modest and kind. However, there were also a few disciples who were secretly discussing. These two disciples were obviously showing off. Yin Feiyang looked at the crowd with a smile. After waiting for a while and seeing that no one came forward to exchange pointers, he said, Senior brothers and sisters, we're here mainly to exchange pointers with your sect's disciples and improve the harmony and friendship between our two sections. Since no one wants to exchange pointers to avoid hurting the harmony, why don't we speak freely and exchange our insights on martial arts? I'm a few years older than all of you. If you have any questions about your cultivation, why don't you tell me? Perhaps I can help you. Hearing this, the numerous disciples immediately understood that Yin Feiyang wanted to point them in the right direction. Many disciples of the White Du Institute and the Jianglu Institute immediately opened their mouths to ask questions. They wanted to get some pointers from Yin Feiyang. Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai also didn't refuse anyone. They answered everyone's questions one by one and won the gratitude of many disciples. In just a short while, the two of them had become closer to many disciples and appeared to be on good terms. Seeing this scene, the disciples of the Wind Cloud Institute all had cold faces and their eyes surged with anger. At this moment, a disciple suddenly saw Ji Tianqing and the others and immediately shouted. Hey, aren't those the senior brothers of the Wind Cloud Institute? Everyone, look, the senior brothers of the Wind Cloud Institute are here. After the voice spread out, many disciples turned their heads to look at Ji Tianqing and the others with faces full of expectation. The 10 disciples of the Wind Cloud Institute were the most outstanding geniuses of the Sky Pillar sect's outer sect. Many outer sect disciples were guessing who would be stronger in the exchange of pointers between their own sect's geniuses and the Tianjian sect's disciples. Ji Tianqing, Lu Mingyang, and the others immediately became the focus of everyone's attention. Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai also turned their heads to look at Ji Tianqing and the others and revealed a faint smile. Even the always cold and arrogant Hang Chen cast an indifferent glance at Ji Tianqing and the others. Ji Tianqing led Lu Mingyang and the others through the crowd of onlookers and walked towards Hang Chen's group of 3 in the middle of the square. Since they had made an appearance, they should go over and greet the disciples of the Tianjian sect. They couldn't weaken the reputation of the Wind Cloud Institute. Ji Tianqing walked to the middle of the square and expressionlessly looked at Yin Feiyang. He asked, "Senior brother Yin Feiyang, I have a question to ask. If someone were to steal the limelight in front of you and display their slight skill in front of an expert, how would you respond?" Chapter 184. Ji Tianqing's words silenced the entire square. Nearly 200 outer sect disciples revealed complicated expressions as they silently stared at him. No one was stupid. Everyone could tell that Ji Tianqing was implying that Yin Feiyang and the other two were trying to steal the limelight and display their slight skills in front of an expert. Many disciples agreed with Ji Tianqing's words. They felt that Yin Feiyang and the other two were being too ostentatious. But there were also a few disciples who were confused and doubtful. They thought to themselves, why is the senior brother of the Tempest Hall so angry? The three Tianjian sect disciples naturally understood Ji Tianqing's meaning. Their expressions immediately changed and their smiles disappeared. Yin Feiyang calmly looked at Ji Tianqing and cupped his hands. "May I ask how I should address you, brother?" "Ji Tianqing of the Tempest Hall." Yin Feiyang faintly smiled. "Junior brother Ji's words are too serious. The three of us have come under the orders of our master to exchange and learn from your noble sect's disciples. We originally wanted to visit you at the Tempest Hall and exchange our insights on the martial Tao with you. Unfortunately, you were all busy cultivating and couldn't be seen. We didn't want to disturb you, so we could only exchange pointers." Although Yin Feiyang's words were dignified and even sounded a little aggrieved. But Ji Tianqing and the others could tell that Yin Feiyang was clearly mocking them for being afraid to fight. At this time, Ran Donglai also cupped his hands towards Ji Tianqing and explained, "Senior brother Yin and I are both obsessed with the Tao of the sword. Apart from meditating and cultivating, we practice our sword techniques. But we didn't expect that after exchanging a few moves, we would attract so many junior brothers and sisters to watch. We didn't want to cause any misunderstandings, but our junior brothers and sisters were too enthusiastic. They all requested us to display a few more moves. As the saying goes, the guest follows the host's wishes. We could only comply and continue to display the 7 murders sword technique. We didn't expect to cause a misunderstanding with junior brother Ji. We were rude." After speaking, Ran Donglai and Yin Feiyang bowed towards Ji Tianqing and the others to express their apology. But how could Ji Tianqing believe their nonsense? "You two like to spar with each other. Can't you spar in Pine Tree Courtyard? Why did they have to come to the outer sanctum square to spar? Wasn't this clearly for the outer sect disciples to see?" However, Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai kept a low profile and did a good job on the surface, making it difficult for Ji Tianqing to flare up. Many of the spectating disciples still didn't understand the situation and thought that he was making a big fuss over nothing. It was even to the extent that some people were discussing in secret and felt wronged for Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and expressionlessly said to Yin Feiyang and the other two, "If the two of you like to spar, you can practice in the Green Pine Courtyard. Although the disciples of our sect are slow-witted, they are taught by the deacons of the various courtyards. There is no need to trouble the two of you to guide them. Also, the two of you don't have to be in such a hurry to spar with the disciples of our academy. The Dragon Mountain tournament will be held in 7 days. At that time, we'll meet in the arena. Wouldn't that be simpler and clearer?" Hearing the words, Dragon Mountain Tournament, many disciples were startled and didn't understand what was going on. Everyone immediately began discussing in low voices. Some disciples who had heard of the Dragon Mountain Tournament immediately explained it to others. As a result, many disciples quickly understood the reason and meaning of the Dragon Mountain Tournament. Everyone's gaze towards Yin Feiyang and the other two became strange. Even the disciples who felt wronged for Yin Feiyang and the other two were filled with shame and self-blame. Only now did they know that Yin Feiyang and the other two were modest on the surface, but in reality, they were representing the Tianjian sect to fight for Dragon Mountain against the Sky Pillar sect. The resources produced by Dragon Mountain were supposed to be used by the outer sect disciples for cultivation. As a result, Yin Feiyang and the other two were the evildoers who stole their resources. How could they still feel close to them? In a short period of time, the mentality of the nearly 200 disciples in the square had changed. Many people had a common enemy and were glaring angrily at Yin Feiyang and the other two. They also had expectations and support for Ji Tianqing and the others. Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai looked at each other. They both felt that Ji Tianqing was a difficult person to deal with. The two of them had put on a flawless front, but Ji Tianqing had torn apart their pretense, making the atmosphere very awkward. Finally, the silent and arrogant Hang Chen stepped in front of Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai. Among the three disciples, it was clear that Hang Chen was the leader. Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai knew that he was about to speak and immediately took half a step back. Hang Chen looked at Ji Tianqing indifferently and expressionlessly asked, "Junior Marshal Brother Ji, it seems that you are one of the candidates for the Dragon Mountain tournament?" Ji Tianqing's expression didn't change as he said, "That's right." Hang Chen nodded and the corner of his mouth hooked up in a playful smile. "Since Junior Marshal Brother Ji is so unreasonable, then we won't disturb you for the next few days. However, I have to remind Junior Marshal Brother Ji that my heavy sword of the setting sun weighs more than 900 pounds. It is an indestructible divine weapon. Junior Marshal Brother Ji, you should think of a way to get a peerless armor to wear so that you won't be injured by my heavy sword of the setting sun during the Dragon Mountain tournament. At that time, if the harmony between the two sects is damaged because of this, then I don't want that to happen." Finished speaking, he reached out and touched the hilt of the setting sun heavy sword. Under the sunlight, the thick and broad blade shined with a faint red light. This was definitely Hang Chen's threat. Although his tone was calm and his words didn't carry the slightest bit of anger. His condescending attitude and arrogant and disdainful eyes made the people of the Wind Cloud Hall feel a strong sense of contempt. The expressions of the Wind Cloud Hall disciples changed as they angrily glared at Hang Chen. Ji Tianqing's expression was still calm as he indifferently said, "Many thanks for Senior Marshal Brother Hang Chen's reminder. I won't see you off." Hang Chen's eyes flashed with a cold smile as he led Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai away. After a while, the three of them passed through the crowd and left the square, returning to Pine Tree Courtyard. The people of the Wind Cloud Hall stood in the square and looked at the backs of Hang Chen's group as they left. Their faces were filled with anger. Too much. The disciples of the Tianjian sect are actually so arrogant. Especially Hang Chen, he actually dared to threaten our sect's disciples in public. He's simply too arrogant. Preposterous. The disciples of the Tianjian sect came to our sect, but not only did they not know how to restrain themselves, they even dared to swagger through the streets. I'm so angry. Hang Chen is an expert at the 5th stage of the profound comprehension stage after all. When the day of the tournament comes, Ji Tianqing will probably suffer a calamity. Don't say such discouraging words. No matter what, we can't weaken the sect's prestige. The disciples were filled with righteous indignation, but they also felt deeply helpless. Even if they saw Hang Chen's group strut around, they didn't have enough strength to defeat Hang Chen's group on the spot and show off the sect's prestige. Ji Tianqing glanced at the people around him and calmly said, "Everyone, don't mind it. Let's all go back." After saying that, he was about to lead the crowd out of the square. At this time, many disciples in the square shouted loudly, "Senior Marshal Brother Ji Tianqing, you must defeat the people of the Tianjian sect in the Dragon Mountain tournament. Senior Marshal Brother Ji, you must take back Dragon Mountain for everyone." Chapter 185. Hang Chen's group of 3 was walking on a tree-lined path back to Pine Courtyard. Hang Chen walked in front with Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai following behind him. Their expressions were somewhat gloomy. Ran Donglai frowned and couldn't help but complain, I already said that we would definitely incur the wrath of the crowd if we brazenly ran to the plaza to practice the sword. I don't know what Deacon Qi is thinking. He clearly knows that we will become the target of public criticism, yet he still wants us to do this? Although Yin Feiyang didn't understand, he still smiled and advised, Junior Brother Ran, Lord Deacon definitely has his reasons for wanting us to do this. Don't complain. Hang Chen also said in a low voice, for countless years, our sect has never sent a disciple to the Sky Pillar sect. In this year's Dragon Mountain tournament, the sect master sent us to the Sky Pillar sect to exchange knowledge. What do we have to exchange knowledge with those trash from the Tempest Courtyard? The sect master must have a deeper meaning for making such an arrangement. We don't need to delve into it. We just need to follow orders. Wait until the Dragon Mountain tournament. We will beat up those trash from the Tempest Courtyard and complete our mission. Ran Donglai and Yin Feiyang both nodded with sneers on their faces. After everyone from the Tempest Courtyard returned, they all returned to their rooms. Not long after Ji Tianqing entered his room, there was a knock on the door. He quickly opened the door and saw that the person knocking was Han Xiaofan. Deacon Han. Why have you come? Under normal circumstances, if Han Xiaofan had something to do, he would ring the bell and gather everyone in the main hall. Ji Tianqing didn't expect that Han Xiaofan would personally come to find him. Han Xiaofan didn't enter the room and nodded. Ji Tianqing, come with me. Elder Chu wants to see you. Elder Chu wants to see us? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows. He immediately guessed that the outer sect elder wanted to see him and Lu Mingyang. It was most likely because of the Dragon Mountain tournament. Thus, he followed Han Xiaofan out of the Tempest Courtyard. Lu Mingyang was already waiting at the entrance. The two followed Han Xiaofan to the palace behind the Tempest Courtyard. That palace was the outer sect's exclusive treasury, used to store all kinds of weapons, equipment, refining materials, medicinal herbs, and so on. That treasury was a forbidden area, and there were many guards guarding it. Normally, no one dared to approach it. Han Xiaofan led the two of them to the entrance of the treasury. The two of them saw the outer sect elder, Chu Huaishan, standing there waiting for them. Elder Chu, the two disciples have arrived. This subordinate will take his leave. Han Xiaofan saluted Chu Huaishan, then turned and left. Chu Huaishan looked at Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang with a kind smile. You two are not bad. Even though you knew that the Tianjian sect's disciples were powerful, you were still willing to step forward and fight for the Tianjian sect. Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang quickly saluted and said a few modest words. Chu Huaishan nodded and said in a serious tone, as the saying goes, if a worker wants to do a good job, he must first sharpen his tools. If a martial artist wants to display his strongest combat strength, he must be equipped with good weapons. The reason I called you here today is to let you choose 2 suitable weapons and equipment from the treasury. Only then will you be able to make a name for the Tianjian sect in the large competition. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's reaction was flat, but Lu Mingyang was full of joy and excitement. His eyes were shining. Previously, he had planned to drag Ji Tianqing along with him to ask Elder Chu for treasures and weapons. Who would have known that Elder Chu had already planned to do this and had even taken the initiative to bring it up? How could Lu Mingyang not be excited? Afterwards, Chu Huaishan led Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang into the treasury. The first floor was a spacious hall filled with cabinets for medicinal herbs and refining materials. The weapons and equipment were stored on the second floor. They were arranged in rows on shelves and even hung on the walls. After entering the armory on the second floor, Chu Huaishan stopped at the door and said with a smile, "Okay, I'll give you an hour to choose 2 suitable weapons and equipment." Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang bowed and thanked Chu Huaishan, then walked into the treasury. The two of them shuttled through the rows of shelves, their eyes constantly scanning the various weapons and equipment as they carefully selected. The weapons and equipment in this treasury included knives, spears, swords, halberds, axes, bows, hooks, and tridents. In addition to the various weapons, there were all kinds of defensive equipment such as heavy armor, light armor, chain armor, leather armor, and soft armor. There were even hidden weapons such as throwing knives, poison needles, darts, and so on. Although most of the weapons and equipment were of the black level, they were for the use of ordinary disciples. However, there were also some black level, mid-grade, and a few black level, upper-grade weapons and equipment, which were only used to reward disciples who had made great contributions. Chu Huaishan personally brought Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang to choose the equipment. With such special privileges, of course they could choose whatever they wanted. The higher the quality, the better. Ji Tianqing was relatively calm. He didn't look at the swords and weapons, only choosing the appropriate armor. After all, the ice hornless armor he wore before had been damaged in the process of fighting with the witch. Lu Mingyang, on the other hand, was flushed with excitement. Looking at the dazzling array of weapons and equipment, he was already dazzled. One moment, he saw that the sword was good, the next moment, he saw that the spear was very strong, and after a while, he saw a set of armor. In short, tens of thousands of weapons and equipment dazzled him. As long as it was of the black level, he wanted it. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. Ji Tianqing walked out of the treasury first and returned to the door. He bowed to Chu Huaishan and said, "Elder Chu, this disciple has finished choosing." Chu Huaishan saw that he was holding a set of dark golden soft armor in his hand and couldn't help but nod. "Well, you have a good eye. This set of golden sun soft armor is of the black level, high grade. It contains the qi of gung metal. Not only is its defense strong, but it can also refine the warrior's true essence. However, Ji Tianqing, are you sure you only want a set of soft armor and not a sword?" Ji Tianqing smiled and explained, "No need. This disciple already has a sword and is used to it." Chu Huaishan nodded and didn't try to persuade him again. At this time, Lu Mingyang walked out and just happened to hear Ji Tianqing's words. He couldn't help but curl his lips and say, "Ji Tianqing, the three disciples of the Tianjian sect are very strong. If you don't choose a high-grade sword, how can you defeat them? He, or is it because you're certain that we'll lose without a doubt, so you've decided not to pick a weapon?" Hearing Lu Mingyang's voice, Ji Tianqing and Chu Huaishan both turned to look at him. Seeing Lu Mingyang's appearance, the two of them suddenly became a little strange. They saw that Lu Mingyang had a sword on his back, a bow at his waist, a set of armor in his left hand, a golden helmet in his right, and even a pair of combat boots on his feet. These few pieces of equipment, without exception, were all black grade upper grade, the best equipment in the treasury. Chu Huaishan's mouth twitched, and he said unhappily, "You little brat. Are you trying to empty the treasury?" Ji Tianqing saw Lu Mingyang's funny appearance and couldn't help but want to laugh. He said in a mocking tone, "Lu Mingyang, you chose so many pieces of equipment. Are you trying to wrap yourself up like a dumpling? Are you nervous and guilty? Are you so scared that you want to back out?" Lu Mingyang glared at him angrily and said in a low voice, "How can I back out? I am actively preparing for the war and striving to win honor for the sect." Chapter 186. Although Lu Mingyang tried his best to hide it, Ji Tianqing and Chu Huaishan could see that he was filled with fear. It was precisely because of fear and trepidation that he chose so many profound armaments. He wished he could arm himself to the teeth and protect himself in all aspects. In the end, Lu Mingyang did not get what he wanted. Under Chu Huaishan's orders, he had no choice but to put the profound level weapons back, leaving only a sword and a set of armor. After all, before entering the treasury, Chu Huaishan had said that they could choose 2 pieces of equipment. After walking out of the treasury, the 3 of them stood at the entrance. Chu Huaishan said earnestly, "These few days, you have to work hard in your cultivation and do your best to improve your strength in preparation for the large competition." Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang nodded to show that they understood. Then they bid farewell to Chu Huaishan and left the treasury. On the way back to the storm courtyard, Ji Tianqing walked in front, and Lu Mingyang followed behind him unhurriedly. Looking at Ji Tianqing's back, Lu Mingyang's eyes flashed with a trace of a sneer. He was silently scheming in his heart. Humph! Damn Ji Tianqing, I'll let you be arrogant for a few days. After the large competition, you'll be crying. Although I can't defeat Hang Chen and Yin Feiyang, I'm about to reach LV2 of the Tongxian realm. It should be no problem for me to defeat the weakest Ran Donglai. When the large competition begins, I'll defeat Ran Donglai first and win. I'll leave Yin Feiyang and Hang Chen to you. You'll definitely lose. In this way, even if our sect loses and loses Dragon Mountain, I'll be the hero of our victory, and you'll be the sinner of the large competition. Lu Mingyang had made up his mind to use this large competition to become famous and make Ji Tianqing the sinner of the outer sect. He would be too ashamed to face anyone in the future. After returning to the storm courtyard, Lu Mingyang entered the secret chamber and could not wait to cultivate in seclusion, striving to reach LV2 of the Tongxian realm. Ji Tianqing did not waste any time and entered the secret chamber to cultivate. In the secret chamber of Pine Courtyard, Hang Chen stood in the corner with his arms crossed. His expression was indifferent, as if he was silently waiting for something. Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai were huddled together, discussing in low voices. At this moment, the door to the secret chamber opened, and a thin middle-aged man with a goatee walked in. Seeing this person, Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai stopped their discussion and hurriedly bowed respectfully. "Deacon Qi, you've returned." "Greetings, Deacon Qi." Only Hang Chen didn't bow. He looked at Deacon Qi and asked, "Deacon Qi, you asked us to wait in the secret room. Is there something important?" Deacon Qi, who was dressed in a black robe, had a gloomy temperament. His long and narrow eyes flashed with a sharp light. He nodded at Hang Chen and said in a low voice, "This king has summoned all of you here for an important matter. All of you have done well today. You have successfully attracted the attention of the outer sect disciples. In the next few days, the 3 of you will still have to attract the attention of the outer court disciples. Of course, after today's events, the Sky Pillar sect's disciples seem to be somewhat disgusted with you. Therefore, you have to change the location and use a different method to attract their attention. As for the specifics, you don't need this king to give you pointers, right?" Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai were somewhat troubled. They hesitated and didn't speak. Only Hang Chen nodded. "We understand. However, what's the point of doing this? Please dispel our doubts, Deacon Qi." Deacon Qi stroked his goatee and revealed an unfathomable smile. "The sect naturally arranged for us to come to the Sky Pillar sect for a profound reason. It is also for the sect's 1,000-year-old cause. As for your mission, it is to attract the attention of the outer court disciples so that they won't have time to pay attention to this king. This will make it easier for this king to act." Hearing this, Yin Feiyang revealed a puzzled expression and asked expectantly, "Dare I ask Deacon Qi, after we entered the Sky Pillar sect, you didn't appear for an entire day. I wonder if you, Deacon Qi, clearly wouldn't reveal the specific actions and goals." He only smiled and said, "Hee, we came to the Sky Pillar sect to exchange knowledge. This king has come to the 1,000-year-old ancient sect and admires its prestige. Of course, I have to walk around the sect and admire the Sky Pillar sect's scenery and spirit veins. However, don't ask too much about this matter. There's no benefit in knowing. This king will do his best to complete the mission given by the sect master. You also have to do your best to complete your mission." Hang Chen nodded and didn't say anything. His eyes revealed a thoughtful expression. Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai didn't understand. Their eyes were still puzzled, but they didn't dare to ask. After a moment of silence, Deacon Qi continued, "Now that we are in the Sky Pillar sect, you have to be careful. Try not to have any conflicts with the Sky Pillar sect disciples. Even if you have to endure for a while, as long as you can win the tournament and defend Dragon Mountain for the sect, it will be a great contribution. No matter what, you have to win this Dragon Mountain tournament." Hearing his solemn and determined tone, Ran Donglai couldn't help but ask, "Deacon Qi, is Dragon Mountain really that important? Even if there are spirit herb gardens on Dragon Mountain and or veins below, there are many similar treasures in the Star Ancient Realm. Why is the sect so determined to win?" Deacon Qi glanced at him, then looked at Yin Feiyang and Hang Chen. Seeing that the three of them were puzzled, he had to explain, "Listen carefully. This king can tell you, but this is a secret of the sect. You can't leak it out. In the 3 years that the sect has occupied Dragon Mountain, we have developed and excavated Dragon Mountain to the extreme. We have seized almost 80% of the resources in Dragon Mountain. 2 months ago, our sect's guest elder, Huangfu, found the aura of the Heaven Origin Formation in the deepest part of Dragon Mountain. After the exploration of guest Huangfu and the leader, they finally found a Heaven's Origin array from 1,000 years ago in the deepest part of the Dragon Mountain. In that Heaven Origin Formation, there is a mysterious ancient tomb. It is very grand and majestic. That ancient tomb is so majestic, and it is protected by the Heaven Origin Formation. It must be the tomb of an expert from 1,000 years ago. There must be rare treasures in it, and there might even be the martial arts inheritance of an expert. If the sect wants to grow and dominate the Tianshan region, not only will we need endless cultivation resources, but we also need to find all kinds of powerful martial arts inheritances and secret techniques. Therefore, the sect master is determined to win that ancient tomb." Hearing this, Hang Chen, Yin Feiyang, and Yin Feiyang were surprised, and their eyes were filled with anticipation. Deacon Qi said in a serious tone, "Unfortunately, the protective formation of that ancient tomb is too profound. Even with Huangfu's talent, he can't break it in 2 months. You can't lose the tournament, and the sect can't return Dragon Mountain to the Sky-bearing sect. Otherwise, that ancient tomb of an expert will belong to the Sky-bearing sect. Do you understand?" Chapter 187. After listening to Deacon Qi's explanation, Hang Chen and the others understood that Dragon Mountain was so important. No wonder the sect master was so determined to obtain Dragon Mountain. Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai could imagine that as long as they won this competition and protected Dragon Mountain for the sect, they would definitely be rewarded and valued by the sect master. In the future, their status in the sect would be even higher and they would receive the best treatment. They might even be like Hang Chen, receiving extra training from the sect master and being nurtured as elite geniuses. Deacon Qi added, "Now that 2 months have passed, the sect master and guest elder Huangfu still haven't been able to break the Heaven Essence Array. The ancient tomb's protective array is too exquisite. But the Sky Pillar sect is stronger, has a deeper foundation, and is more proficient in array formations. Moreover, there are 2 Heaven Essence experts in the sect. If the Sky Pillar sect obtains Dragon Mountain, they will definitely be able to break the array within 3 years. At that time, they will obtain the treasures and martial arts inheritances in the ancient tomb and will be even stronger." Speaking of this, Deacon Qi looked at the 3 with a solemn expression and said, "Now, do you understand how important your mission is?" Hang Chen and the others nodded and said solemnly, "Disciple understands." Deacon Qi nodded slightly and revealed a satisfied expression. "All right, this matter ends here. You must keep your mouths shut and not leak the slightest bit of information." Hang Chen and Yin Feiyang hurriedly nodded and solemnly expressed that they would keep this a secret. Soon after, Deacon Qi left the secret room. Hang Chen and the others remained in the secret room and discussed their next mission in low voices. The three discussed for a while and quickly made up their minds. Since they had already caused the Sky Pillar sect disciples to be disgusted by their sword practice in the square, they would no longer display their sword skills. In 2 days, they would directly go to the Wind Cloud Courtyard and exchange pointers with the Wind Cloud Courtyard's disciples. This way, they could not only investigate the strength of the Wind Cloud Courtyard's disciples but also attract the attention of the outer sect disciples. 2 days quickly passed. On the morning of the 3rd day, Ji Tianqing was meditating in his room, nourishing his true essence and sword embryo and consolidating his martial arts realm. Suddenly, a bell rang outside the courtyard. Ji Tianqing hurriedly stopped and quickly walked out of the room, rushing towards the main hall. He walked into the courtyard and found that there were many outer sect disciples gathered in the courtyard, looking curiously into the main hall. At the same time, several disciples of the Storm Courtyard also hurried to the main hall. After everyone entered the main hall, they saw Han Xiaofan sitting at the head seat. On the right side of the hall, there were 3 young men sitting cross-legged on the ground, waiting calmly. Ji Tianqing and the others immediately recognized the 3 people as Hang Chen, Yin Feiyang, and Ran Donglai. Han Xiaofan waved his hand, indicating for Ji Tianqing and the others to sit on the left side of the hall. Thus, Ji Tianqing and the others sat in a row, facing Hang Chen and the other 2. Han Xiaofan announced in a dignified voice, "Ladies and gentlemen, I've called you here today because 3 disciples of the Tianjian sect invited you here. They want to hold a small martial arts exchange. Everyone can exchange and discuss martial arts and learn from each other. You can speak freely. I will not interfere." After speaking, Han Xiaofan left the hall, allowing everyone to communicate with each other. The hall fell into silence, and the atmosphere was somewhat awkward. On the surface, both sides looked normal, but in fact, they both had their own thoughts and were deeply hostile to each other. The disciples of the Storm Courtyard did not speak, but the 3 disciples of the Tianjian sect could not help but speak. Ran Donglai's eyes swept over everyone, and he smiled slightly, saying, "Since all of you are so modest and are not willing to exchange questions first, then I will boldly ask a question first. Last month, I collected 13 kinds of medicinal herbs, such as wind wormwood, soul-returning grass, mulberry heart flower, magnolia fruit, goose sandalwood seed, 1,000-mile leaf. Using the Heavenly Star Big Dipper art and the 3 literary true fires, I wanted to refine 3 soul-returning pills to enhance my cultivation. Junior brothers, is there a problem with this method? Where is the crux of the failure? How can it be improved?" Hearing Ran Donglai's question, everyone understood. Ran Donglai was good at alchemy, and he wanted to test them with alchemy. The disciples looked at each other and frowned, deep in thought. After a moment, Shi Jingqing, who was proficient in alchemy, seemed to understand something, and he couldn't help but reveal a confident expression. He quietly glanced at Ji Tianqing, and seeing that Ji Tianqing was expressionless and had no intention of speaking, he took the lead and said, "Senior brother Ran, of course there is a problem with this method. First of all, you chose the wrong medicinal herbs. Since you added the magnolia fruit, you shouldn't have used the 1,000-mile leaf. The medicinal properties of the 2 medicinal herbs will clash, and it will inevitably cause an adverse reaction, leading to failure. Secondly, you used the 3 literary and 4 martial true flames. You should have used the 4 literary and 3 martial true flames to be more balanced. Speaking of improvement, I have already explained the method of using the true flames. The medicinal herbs also need to be changed. If you replace the 1,000-mile leaf with heavenly trust grass, the effect will be better." When the disciples of the Storm Courtyard saw that Shi Jingqing was full of confidence, they revealed gratified and expectant expressions. In their opinion, since Shi Jingqing was so confident, he naturally won this round of debate. Unexpectedly, after Ran Donglai heard this, he revealed a playful smile. His tone was somewhat regretful as he said, although this junior brother has a good understanding of alchemy and has a solid foundation, junior brother is still too young. However, junior martial brother is still young, and his experience is still too shallow. In fact, there is no problem with my alchemy method. I completely followed the prescription, and I really did successfully refine the origin restoring pill. This junior brother's understanding is only baseless conjecture and deduction. If you personally try to refine the pill, you will know that what you said is completely wrong. After saying this, Ran Donglai took out a small jade bottle from his sleeve and poured out 3 dark red pills. They were the origin restoring pills. Shi Jingsheng's expression suddenly became unsightly, and his eyes were filled with shame and indignation. The disciples of the storm courtyard were also astonished, and they found it hard to believe. Shi Jingsheng frowned and asked in a deep voice, "Senior brother Ran, you clearly said that you failed to refine the pill and asked us about the crux of the problem and how to improve it. After I finished speaking, you said that you refined the pill and that there was no problem with the method. Are you deliberately playing with me?" Ran Donglai smiled and shook his head. "Junior brother, carefully recall my words. When did I say that I failed to refine the pill? I only asked a question and everyone discussed it. Junior brother, your understanding of alchemy isn't deep enough, so you believe that I failed. Could it be that you blame me?" Shi Jingsheng was suddenly speechless, and his face was ashen from anger. He had lost all face and didn't want to stay in the hall to continue the exchange. However, if he got up and left, it would seem ungentlemanly and make Ran Donglai laugh at him. At this time, Yin Feiyang smiled and said, "Just now, junior brother Ran raised a question about alchemy. Perhaps everyone is obsessed with martial arts and isn't proficient in alchemy, so you couldn't answer it. Since that's the case, let's continue the exchange. It just so happens that I have a question about martial arts cultivation in my heart. I'll say it for everyone to discuss and see if junior brothers can help me. As everyone knows, martial artists use their dantian to store true essence and use their 9 main meridians to circulate true essence throughout their body. However, I have a senior brother from the same sect who uses his 10 main meridians to circulate true essence, making the power of his true essence far surpass that of ordinary martial artists. His martial arts aptitude is also outstanding. I've never understood how such a miraculous thing could happen. I wonder if junior brothers can dispel my doubts." Shi Jingsheng had just been tricked by Ran Donglai, so when he heard Yin Feiyang's question, he subconsciously sneered, "Huh, senior brother Yin, do you think we'll be tricked again? The human body only has 9 main meridians, this is a well-known fact. Your senior brother from the same sect actually has 10 main meridians? I think you're lying. Your senior brother doesn't have 10 main meridians." Chapter 188. Shi Jingsheng's words were exactly what the disciples of the Wind Cloud sect wanted to say. They had already been tricked by Ran Donglai, so how could they be tricked by Yin Feiyang again? Yin Feiyang heard Shi Jingsheng's reproach and bore everyone's questioning gazes, but his expression did not change. He revealed a playful smile and said with certainty, "Junior brother, you're being overly cautious. My senior brother does indeed have 10 main meridians. Since none of you have seen such a miraculous thing and can't explain it to me, I'll be frank. My senior brother who has 10 main meridians is sitting beside me. He is senior brother Hang Chen." Shi Jingsheng and the other disciples' expressions suddenly changed as they looked at Hang Chen in unison. Yin Feiyang pointed at Hang Chen beside him and said proudly, "Senior brother Hang Chen's physique is different from ordinary people. He has the top profound rank sword-fighting bloodline, so he was born with an extra main meridian. It's because he has the sword-fighting bloodline that he can achieve twice the result with half the effort when cultivating martial arts. He also has extraordinary comprehension and aptitude for the sword principle. When he was only 18, he broke through to the mystic comprehending realm. Only 2 years have passed, and he has reached the 5th level of the mystic comprehending realm. Speaking of this, Yin Feiyang could not help but reveal an envious expression. In the courtyard outside the hall, hundreds of outer sect disciples had gathered. They had been listening to the sounds in the hall. When they heard Yin Feiyang's words, their faces were filled with shock and they exclaimed. Many disciples could not help but discuss. They felt that the strength of the Tianjian sect's disciples was incredible. At the same time, many outer sect disciples were worried about the Dragon Mountain tournament. There were even people who whispered pessimistically that the Wind Cloud sect would definitely lose this tournament. It was impossible to take back Dragon Mountain. For a moment, the courtyard was noisy. Yin Feiyang, Ran Donglai, and the other two heard the exclamations and discussions outside the courtyard and secretly sneered with satisfaction. This situation was exactly what they wanted to see. Seeing that everyone was silent, Yin Feiyang continued, the human body has 9 meridians. This is indeed a well-known fact. However, this is only limited to ordinary people and does not include natural geniuses. A genius like senior brother Hang Chen is born with a special bloodline, so his talent far surpasses ours, and his combat strength far surpasses martial practitioners of the same level. Junior brothers, you can't even guess this? Have you never seen a genius with a special bloodline? Or perhaps, there's almost no such genius among the outer court disciples of your esteemed sect? As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of the disciples of the Tempest Hall immediately changed. Their eyes were filled with shame and indignation. Yin Feiyang was too arrogant. He was clearly mocking the Tempest Hall's disciples for being short-sighted and mocking the Sky Pillar sect for having no one in the outer sect. The outer court disciples in the courtyard also understood the meaning behind Yin Feiyang's words, and a burst of discussion immediately erupted. Everyone was very disgusted with Yin Feiyang and wished they could scold him to his face. Unfortunately, they were only disciples of the White Dew Courtyard and River Flow Courtyard. Being able to enter the Tempest Courtyard to watch the martial arts exchange between the geniuses was already a blessing. They didn't have the right to enter the hall and talk to Yin Feiyang and the others. As a result, the numerous outer court disciples could only silently pray, hoping that the disciples of the Tempest Hall would launch a counterattack and regain their dignity. The atmosphere in the hall became more and more subtle. Everyone understood that Hang Chen's group was clearly using the martial arts exchange as an excuse to flaunt their prowess and deliberately belittle and suppress the Tempest Hall. However, this was a martial arts exchange, so they could speak freely. Moreover, Ran Donglai and Yin Feiyang didn't spout nonsense to slander the Tempest Hall. It was because they were short-sighted and couldn't refute the other party, giving them the opportunity to make fun of them. Several disciples were filled with shame and indignation. They secretly clenched their fists and forcefully suppressed their anger. At this moment, Ji Tianqing, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. He calmly looked at Yin Feiyang and asked in a deep voice, "Senior brother Yin just said that the human body stores true essence in the Dantian and circulates true essence in the 9 main meridians. This is something everyone knows. Then I would like to ask senior brother Yin, if a person's Dantian was crippled, would they be unable to cultivate and could only become a cripple?" Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai were startled. They looked at him with a strange expression and the corners of their mouths hooked up into a smile. I didn't think that junior brother Ji would ask such a question. If the Dantian was crippled, there wouldn't even be a place to store true essence. How could one cultivate? This is a truth that even a 3-year-old child knows. Is there a need to ask? It was clear that Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai both felt that Ji Tianqing asking such an idiotic question was simply laughable. After hearing Ji Tianqing's question, the hundreds of outer court disciples in the courtyard immediately burst into an uproar. Many people revealed looks of disdain. There were even some people who laughed and shook their heads. Even more people were discussing whether Ji Tianqing's brain had been flooded with water. Did this guy think that the Tempest Hall hadn't lost enough face? Asking such an idiotic question, did he not feel the pain of being slapped in the face? In the main hall, several Tempest Hall disciples looked as if their parents had died. Their faces were gloomy. Originally, when they saw Ji Tianqing ask such a question, they thought that he had some brilliant plan to regain some face for the Tempest Hall. But when they heard Ji Tianqing's question, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Their faces became even uglier. Although they didn't question or ridicule Ji Tianqing to his face, they secretly sighed and felt a deep sense of helplessness. I thought that Ji Tianqing was going to make a big move and ruthlessly slap Yin Feiyang's face. Is Ji Tianqing joking? I thought he was going to step back. This is a question that even an idiot knows. He actually asked it. Does he really want our Tempest Hall to become a laughingstock? There are so many outer sect disciples in the courtyard. If they heard Ji Tianqing's words, wouldn't they laugh their heads off? Looking at the reactions of those outer sect disciples, they probably think that our Tempest Hall is an idiot, right? Faced with everyone's doubts and ridicule, Ji Tianqing's expression didn't change. He solemnly asked, since that's the case, Senior Brother Yin and Senior Brother Ran both believe that a person with a crippled dantian is unable to cultivate, right? Yin Feiyang nodded and said with a smile, if the dantian is damaged, it can still be repaired. But if the dantian is crippled, then there is no possibility of cultivating. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth hooked up into a mocking sneer. When I saw Senior Brother Ran and Senior Brother Yin talking so loudly, I thought that you were knowledgeable and knew a lot. I didn't think that the so-called Tianjian sect's geniuses were just people with an undeserved reputation and shallow vision. Now I want to tell you that the dantian isn't the source of a martial artist's strength, nor is it the only place where true essence is stored. Hearing these words, the Tempest Hall disciples' expressions changed and they all revealed looks of doubt. The hundreds of outer sect disciples in the courtyard also quieted down and looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief, waiting to see how he would explain. Yin Feiyang, Ran Donglai, and Hang Chen all revealed disdainful sneers, waiting to see how Ji Tianqing would justify himself. His words were truly earth-shattering and went against the common sense of martial arts. It was too sensational. If he could give a reasonable explanation and evidence, then it would shock the martial arts world and his name would spread throughout the Tianshan region. On the other hand, if he couldn't give a reasonable explanation and evidence, then he would be playing to the gallery and would become the laughingstock of the Tianshan region. The geniuses of the two sects in the main hall, as well as the hundreds of outer sect disciples in the courtyard, all stared at Ji Tianqing. Everyone held their breath and listened attentively, waiting for his explanation. Chapter 189. Under everyone's questioning gazes, Ji Tianqing opened his mouth. His expression was calm as he said with certainty, the human body is a treasure trove. A martial artist cultivates by absorbing the power of heaven and earth and unearthing the mysteries of this treasure trove. The common people only know that the dantian is used to store true essence, but they don't know that some people with destroyed dantians can condense true essence into a birth pill to replace the dantian. In addition, the meridians and acupuncture points can also store true essence. Using them is much more convenient than using the dantian, and the power of true essence is much greater. There is only one dantian, but the human body has 72 acupuncture points. If true essence is stored in the acupuncture points, it will be able to hold an even more boundless amount of true essence. Moreover, after the acupuncture points are tempered by true essence, the meridians will also be strengthened. The martial artist's strength will also greatly increase, and his combat strength will far surpass all martial artists of the same level. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, the disciples of the two sects in the hall all stared with wide eyes, revealing expressions of disbelief. Even the hundreds of outer court disciples in the courtyard let out cries of disbelief as they whispered to each other. Is this true? How come I've never heard of this before? Using true essence to condense a birth pill to replace the dantian? Using meridians and acupuncture points to store true essence? Isn't this too inconceivable? Although Ji Tianqing's words are very shocking, I feel that what he said is reasonable. Perhaps it really can be done. Yes, Ji Tianqing's tone is firm and confident. It doesn't seem like he's making things up. But isn't this too contrary to common sense? If there really is such a cultivation method in this world, how come we don't know about it? In the hall, Hang Chen and Yin Feiyang restrained their sneers as they frowned in contemplation. Ji Tianqing's words forced them to seriously consider. Could this kind of talk hold water? After a moment, Yin Feiyang opened his mouth and said, "Junior apprentice brother Ji, although what you said sounds reasonable, it does not violate common sense. But this is indeed against the common sense of martial arts. Please forgive us for not believing you, unless you can show us proof." Ran Donglai also nodded in agreement. If you don't have evidence, then even if you exaggerate it, it's useless. Several disciples of the Storm Hall also looked at Ji Tianqing with expectant eyes. They wanted to see how he would prove his words. Ji Tianqing said with a solemn expression, "Of course there is evidence. The cultivation method I just mentioned was created by a martial arts sage 1,000 years ago. Furthermore, that martial sage used this method to become an almighty. He once set foot in the Tianjin region and left behind a martial arts legend. However, you may not have heard of the legend from 1,000 years ago. Furthermore, all of you are people with complete dantians, so you wouldn't pay attention to such legends. Plus, senior brother Yin, you all came from the Yong'an region. It's normal that you haven't heard of the legend in the Tianjin region." Hearing this, many people frowned in confusion, secretly wondering who the martial arts sage he was talking about was. Unfortunately, almost no one had heard of the legend from 1,000 years ago, let alone know who the Almighty was. Hang Chen, Yin Feiyang, and the other two were also confused. They couldn't tell if Ji Tianqing's words were true or false. Even Shi Jingcheng, Lu Mingyang, and the others were confused. They couldn't help but whisper to each other. The disciples of the two sects in the hall, as well as the outer disciples in the courtyard, were all skeptical of Ji Tianqing's words. No one could refute him, but no one truly believed or agreed with him. Yin Feiyang frowned and thought for a moment, but still shook his head. He said in a serious tone, "Junior brother Ji, although what you said seems to be true, it seems like it's true. However, you can't even say who that martial sage is. No one has heard of that legend. Therefore, your words are not trustworthy and cannot be used as evidence." Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently. The corner of his mouth hooked up into a sneer, but he didn't intend to explain. Of course, he knew who that martial sage was. He could also produce solid evidence. After all, he was the one whose dantian was destroyed. However, he didn't want to say Kenshin's name, and he wouldn't say that his dantian was destroyed in public. The disciples of both sides were in a stalemate. At this moment, a thin figure in a black robe walked into the hall from outside the door. "Feiyang, Donglai, what this disciple said is true. That legend is true. It's just that your knowledge is shallow and you haven't heard of that ancient legend. In fact, that ancient legend is only known by a very small number of experts. The person who came was Deacon Qi of the Tianjian sect." When Hang Chen, Yin Feiyang, and the other two saw him enter the hall, they immediately stood up and saluted him. Deacon Qi looked at Ji Tianqing with shining eyes and praised from the bottom of his heart, "Just now, when I heard this disciples' debate, it was truly wonderful and made one's heart surge. At such a young age, you have such extensive knowledge. Not only do you know the ancient legend from 1,000 years ago, but you can also say something that shocked the martial world. You are really amazing. In this martial arts exchange, our Tianjian sect admits defeat. Our disciples' knowledge and experience are indeed not as good as that of your sect's genius." Deacon Qi nodded slightly to Ji Tianqing and showed an encouraging smile. He said seriously, with your extraordinary knowledge and aptitude, you will definitely be at the top of the list of stars in the future. He then looked at Hang Chen and the other two and said with a dignified face, this martial arts exchange ends here. I hope you can broaden your horizons and gain something. Hang Chen, Fei Yang, let's go. After that, Deacon Qi led Hang Chen and the other two out of the hall and out of the Fengyun courtyard. Many of the outer disciples in the courtyard were still in shock and hadn't recovered yet. Even the disciples of the Fengyun courtyard in the hall were still thinking about Deacon Qi's words with a surprised expression on their faces. No one would have thought that the martial arts exchange would end up like this. Originally, the three disciples of the Tianjian sect had swaggered around and suppressed the disciples of the Fengyun courtyard to the point that they couldn't raise their heads and made a fool of themselves time and time again. But in the end, Ji Tianqing said a shocking martial arts speech. Not only did it shock Hang Chen and the other two, but it also made Deacon Qi of the Tianjian sect full of admiration and praise. This caused many disciples to be filled with astonishment, and their gazes toward Ji Tianqing became extremely complicated. Many disciples were full of admiration, envy, and curiosity for Ji Tianqing. After a long time, the hundreds of outer disciples in the courtyard dispersed. When they left the Fengyun courtyard, they were still discussing what had just happened in groups of 3 or 5. When the Fengyun courtyard quieted down, several disciples of the Fengyun courtyard calmed down and asked Ji Tianqing, how do you know about those legends and cultivation methods? Brother Ji, did you get some advice from an expert? Ji Tianqing looked at everyone's puzzled expression and couldn't help but reveal a smile. He calmly said, I saw it in the ancient history books. If you have nothing to do, you should read more books. It's good for you. Chapter 190. Manager Qi quickly left the Tempest courtyard with Hang Chen and the others. After returning to the Azure Pine courtyard, everyone entered a secret room. Clearly, they had something to discuss. Just now, Manager Qi had admitted defeat to Ji Tianqing in front of everyone in the Tempest courtyard. This made Hang Chen and the others somewhat unconvinced. As soon as they entered the secret room, Yin Feiyang asked, Sir Manager, you deliberately admitted defeat just now. Were you afraid that we would be in the limelight and suppress the Tempest courtyard, angering the Sky Pillar sect? Manager Qi shook his head and said with a grave expression, I didn't admit defeat on purpose. That brat Ji Tianqing has extraordinary experience and knowledge. He really isn't simple. Yin Feiyang slightly frowned and was silent for a moment before nodding in agreement. Sir Manager is right. I've secretly observed and investigated. Ji Tianqing should be the most outstanding among the 10 disciples of the Tempest courtyard. In the Dragon Mountain tournament in a few days, he will represent the Sky Pillar sect. Manager Qi slightly nodded and said in a cold tone, it seems that Ji Tianqing should be heavily nurtured by the Sky Pillar sect. In the future, he will most likely become an elite genius of the Sky Pillar sect. In this Dragon Mountain tournament, the 3 of you will keep a close eye on him. If there's a chance to cripple him, that would be even better. Otherwise, when he grows into a powerhouse in the future, he will be a stumbling block for our sect. Hang Chen grinned and revealed a cold smile. Hee, I already had this intention. Since Sir Manager has given the order, then I can rest assured. At this time, Ran Donglai asked again, Manager Qi, there are only 3 days left until the Dragon Mountain tournament. We've already discussed and figured out the details of the Tempest courtyard. Shouldn't we return? Manager Qi waved his hand and said in a deep voice, there's no hurry. We'll return when the 7-day deadline is up. My mission is not yet complete. I still need to hurry and investigate. In the past few days, I've already walked through the 9 peaks of the Sky Pillar sect and have a preliminary understanding of the 9 dragon spirit vein. No wonder the Sky Pillar sect can stand at the peak of the Tianshan region and prosper for thousands of years. The founding ancestor of the Sky Pillar sect used 9 mountains to set up a grand formation, forming a 9-dragon spirit vein. Not only did it gather the spirit chi of half of the ancient star realm, but it also accumulated boundless luck for the Sky Pillar sect. With such luck and countless resources, how can the Sky Pillar sect not be strong and prosperous? Hang Chen, Yin Feiyang, and the other 2 understood that if a sect wanted to flourish for a long time, then not only did it require the support and protection of experts, it also required great karmic luck and abundant resources. The most important thing was that the sect could continuously absorb new blood and have a large reserve of talents. Only then could the sect produce experts in large numbers and truly prosper. Although the Tianjian sect had been growing rapidly in recent years, the Tianjian sect had only been established for a few hundred years. Its foundation was far less profound than the Sky Pillar sects. Even the Tianjian sect was not as majestic and domineering as the Sky Pillar sect. The difference between the 2 sects wasn't just in the number of experts, but also in the number of genius disciples. Manager Qi frowned and said in a low voice, "The Sky Pillar sect's people have been secretly watching us. Every time I move during the day, there are experts secretly following me. I only have an opportunity at night. But no matter how well I hide my movements, the Sky Pillar sect still becomes suspicious. For the next few days, you will stay in the Pine Courtyard. Don't go out and show off. After I complete my mission, we will leave the Sky Pillar sect as soon as possible." Hang Chen and the other 2 didn't ask Manager Qi what he had been doing these past few days. They all knew that Manager Qi was carrying out the mission entrusted to him by the sect master and needed to keep it a secret. For the next 3 days, the Wind Cloud Courtyard was finally quiet. After the martial arts exchange ended, the 3 disciples of the Tianjian sect didn't come out again. Ji Tianqing, Lu Mingyang, and the others had been bitterly cultivating, silently increasing their strength. On the other hand, the White Dew Courtyard and the River Flow Courtyard were still bustling with noise and excitement. News of the martial arts exchange spread throughout the 2 courtyards, causing countless disciples to scramble over each other to discuss it. Ji Tianqing's shocking words widened the horizons of the 1,000+ outer court disciples, and they were all shocked by it. For a time, Ji Tianqing had become an influential figure in the outer sect. It could be said that everyone knew about him. Many disciples were curious about him and inquired about his deeds. As a result, Ji Tianqing had been punished to sweep the floor a few days after entering the sect. He had also been framed and locked up for half a month. This news quickly spread throughout the outer sect. Of course, the matter of him obtaining first place in both the alchemy and formation examinations also spread. His experience was so complicated, bizarre, and turbulent. Naturally, it attracted a lot of discussion. This caused the outer disciples to be even more interested in him, a genius who had been through a lot of misfortune, but was overflowing with talent. Soon, the news spread throughout the outer sect and even the inner sect disciples knew about it. There weren't many inner sect disciples, only 100 or so, but all of them were profound comprehending realm experts. Normally, inner sect disciples didn't pay much attention to outer sect matters. However, this was the first time that a Tianjian sect disciple had come to the Sky Pillar sect for an exchange, so it attracted the attention of the inner sect disciples. For 3 consecutive days, many inner sect disciples were also discussing Ji Tianqing. What everyone discussed the most was the words he had said in public. Some disciples even had their own opinions. In order to argue about this matter, they even went to the deacons and elders to verify the truth. In short, Ji Tianqing had become a hot topic in the Sky Pillar sect. 3 days passed quickly. That evening, the bell for assembly rang in the Wind Cloud Courtyard. Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation and hurried to the main hall. Soon, the 10 disciples were all present. Han Xiaofan walked into the main hall and announced with a solemn expression, "Everyone, today is the last day of the month. Tomorrow, the Dragon Mountain tournament will begin. Everyone, please make your preparations tonight. Tomorrow morning, I will bring everyone to Dragon Mountain to cheer for our sect." The 8 disciples who didn't need to participate in the tournament also revealed looks of anticipation. Han Xiaosheng looked at Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang and asked in a deep voice, "You've been cultivating in seclusion for the past few days. The tournament will begin tomorrow. How are your preparations?" Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion for the past few days. He had been comprehending the 4th level of the Sword Heart Path and pondering about refining his acupoints. He had just reached the 1st level of the Profound Comprehending Realm, so it would be difficult for him to increase his strength in a short period of time. He nodded calmly and said, "Disciple is ready. Please don't worry, Deacon Han." Han Xiaosheng looked at Lu Mingyang. Lu Mingyang immediately revealed a confident smile. "Deacon Han, disciple has already reached the peak of the 1st level of the Profound Comprehending Realm. Ever since I decided to participate in the Dragon Mountain tournament, I felt even more pressure and didn't dare to slack off. Fortunately, disciple has been cultivating in seclusion for the past few days and finally broke through to the 2nd level of the Profound Comprehending Realm." Chapter 191. Lu Mingyang's words made Han Xiaosheng reveal a gratified expression. Even though Lu Mingyang, who was at the 2nd level of the Mystic Enlightening stage, was still no match for Hang Chen. But if his strength increased by 1 level, it would at least increase his chances of winning. The other disciples also looked at Lu Mingyang with envy as they discussed in low voices. Senior brother Lu was at the 1st level of the Mystic Enlightening stage when he entered the sect. It's only been 2 months, and he's already at the 2nd level of the Mystic Enlightening stage. It's several times harder for a Mystic Enlightening stage martial artist to advance by 1 level than a true energy stage martial artist. It's unbelievable that he can advance by 1 level in 2 months. The genius Ji Tianqing has already given us a lot of pressure. I didn't expect Lu Mingyang to be so strong as well. We have to work hard." Lu Mingyang listened to everyone's discussion and felt even more proud. He turned to look at Ji Tianqing with a smug look in his eyes. He was looking forward to seeing Ji Tianqing's expression at this moment. Was it jealousy? Envy? Or vigilance? However, Ji Tianqing's expression was as calm as usual. There was no ripple in his eyes as though he was indifferent to this matter. Lu Mingyang was a little disappointed. He frowned and withdrew his smug look. Han Xiaosheng encouraged everyone with a few words before asking them to leave and gather here tomorrow morning. Everyone left the main hall and returned to their respective residences. After Ji Tianqing returned to his room, he continued to cultivate and try to refine his acupoints. Although Lu Mingyang had successfully broken through to the 2nd level of the Mystic Enlightening stage, it was useless. However, in his opinion, this was completely useless. Lu Mingyang was still no match for the disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect. Lu Mingyang could not even defeat Ran Donglai, who was at the 2nd level of the Mystic Enlightening stage, let alone Hang Chen and Yin Feiyang, who were at the 5th level of the Mystic Enlightening stage. Ji Tianqing's eyes were like torches. He had long seen that Ran Donglai had been at the 2nd level of the Mystic Enlightening stage for a long time and was about to break through to the 3rd level. Lu Mingyang was definitely unreliable if he wanted to win the Dragon Mountain tournament for the Sky Pillar sect and reclaim Dragon Mountain and honor. At that time, only he could complete such a heavy task. The next morning, a new day and a new month had begun. All the disciples were already prepared and hurried to the main hall. Han Xiaosheng and Du Wu had arrived long ago, waiting for everyone in the main hall. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Han Xiaosheng announced in a loud voice, "Today, the Triennial Dragon Mountain Grand Tournament will be held. The time for our sect's honor has come. The Spirit Beast Hall has already prepared mounts for us. In a moment, I will lead everyone to Dragon Mountain. In addition, the 2 elders of our sect will also go to supervise the battle. I hope that the two participating disciples will fight for the honor of our sect. Han Xiaosheng only used 3 short sentences to stir up everyone's blood, causing their morale to soar. Subsequently, Han Xiaosheng and Du Wu led the group out of the wind cloud courtyard. Outside the gate, the disciples of the Spirit Beast Hall had brought over 12 chasing wind horses and were waiting quietly. Those wind-chasing horses were all mid-tier demonic beasts that were raised in the wild. They were bigger than ordinary horses, faster, and had more stamina. Han Xiaosheng and the others mounted the chasing wind horses and followed the mountain path out of Heaven Upholding Peak, galloping towards the north. Dragon Mountain was located 300 miles north of the Sky Upholding Sect, at the border between the Sky Upholding Sect and the Tianjian Sect. Of course, Dragon Mountain was closer to the Sky Upholding Sect, being more than 500 miles away from the Tianjian Sect. In the past, Dragon Mountain belonged to the Sky Upholding Sect. The Sky Upholding Sect had invested a lot of manpower to turn Dragon Mountain into a beautiful medicine garden. The scenery was very pleasant. It was a pity that the two sects had conflicts later on. They had no choice but to decide the ownership of Dragon Mountain in the form of an arena competition. Ji Tianqing and the other disciples had been discussing Dragon Mountain recently, but they had never seen it with their own eyes. On the way to Dragon Mountain, everyone was still imagining what Dragon Mountain, which had provoked the two sects to fight over it, would look like. The chasing wind horses were extremely fast. Facing the rising sun, they galloped between the mountains, as fast as an arrow leaving a bow. In less than 2 hours, everyone had arrived at the foot of Dragon Mountain. When everyone dismounted and stood on the grass, they immediately revealed complicated and strange expressions as they sized up Dragon Mountain from a close distance. The towering and majestic mountain range in front of them was over 3,000 meters high. It wasn't as green and lush as everyone had imagined. There were only a few scattered towering trees, a few useless jungles, and a lot of messy weeds on the mountain. Most of the places were covered with dark brown ground and rocks. Only a few places still had some seedlings of medicinal herbs. However, they looked half dead and didn't have any sense of vitality. At the foot of Dragon Mountain, there was a large river that meandered along the mountain. The river water in the big river was extremely turbid and filled with yellow silt. There were many places in the river that were blocked by huge mountain rocks. There were also a lot of dark brown ores and stone dregs scattered along the riverbank. Everyone could see that this was obviously the Tianjian sect's excessive mining of the ore veins in Dragon Mountain. Moreover, after the Tianjian sect mined the ore veins, in order to save manpower, they dumped the mountain rocks and dregs into the river at the foot of the mountain. Han Xiaosheng and Du Wu's expressions immediately became unsightly. Their eyes were filled with anger. Damn the Tianjian sect. They're a bunch of bastards and robbers. Back then, when our sect was managing Dragon Mountain, everything was in good order. We made Dragon Mountain a beautiful place with beautiful scenery. Yes, when we came to Dragon Mountain to supervise, there were towering trees everywhere. There were herb gardens full of flowers and plants. Even the air was fresh and sweet. The river at the foot of the mountain was as bright as a pearl belt. The river water was so clear that you could see the bottom. You could clearly see many fish swimming in it. In just 3 years, the Tianjian sect destroyed Dragon Mountain to such a miserable state. You can imagine how crazily they plundered Dragon Mountain's resources in these 3 years. When the disciples heard Han Xiaosheng and Du Wu's discussion and saw the miserable state of Dragon Mountain today, their faces were gloomy and their hearts were filled with anger. Lu Mingyang frowned and asked tentatively, "Deacon Han, Dragon Mountain was destroyed by the Tianjian sect. The resources must have been plundered. Does our sect still need to fight?" Hearing his words, Han Xiaosheng and Du Wu both frowned. After a moment of silence, Han Xiaosheng said in a deep voice, "Even if Dragon Mountain was destroyed to such a miserable state, you still have to do your best in today's competition. After all, this Dragon Mountain competition is not only to decide the ownership of Dragon Mountain, but also an opportunity for our sect to wash away the shame and regain our honor." Lu Mingyang nodded silently. He didn't say anything, but he was obviously disappointed in his heart. Everyone stopped at the foot of the mountain for a while. Then, under Han Xiaosheng's lead, they rushed to the top of the mountain. Every Dragon Mountain competition was held on the dragon viewing platform at the top of the mountain. Chapter 192. From the foot of the mountain to the summit, there was a small path paved with bluestone. Although the path was only 2 meters wide, it was clean and tidy, allowing everyone to pass through. However, this was the situation when the Sky Pillar sect was in charge of Dragon Mountain. When Han Xiaosheng led everyone up the mountain, the path became bumpy and rugged. Not only was the bluestone path untended, but it was also overgrown with weeds and fallen leaves. In fact, there were many places that had collapsed or were blocked by mountain rocks. Han Xiaosheng and Du Wu walked in front, looking at the miserable scene on Dragon Mountain. Their expressions became more and more gloomy. Not long after, everyone finally reached the summit. At the highest point of Dragon Mountain, there was a 100-meter wide platform made of marble. It was the dragon viewing platform. In the middle of the stone platform, there was a huge statue of the dragon god. The statue was the legendary dragon god. When the Sky Pillar sect was in charge of Dragon Mountain, the dragon viewing platform was always clean and tidy. It was surrounded by exotic flowers and spirit herbs, giving off a pleasant fragrance. But now, the dragon viewing platform was covered with mud and sand. The exotic flowers and spirit herbs had long been harvested. The entire dragon viewing platform looked desolate and dilapidated. If it weren't for the dozens of Tianjian sect flags and the dozens of Tianjian sect members standing on the platform, who would believe that this was the Dragon Mountain tournament? There were 12 people on the platform. 2 of them were old men wearing purple robes. They were the Tianjian sect's elders. The 3 middle-aged men wearing black robes were the Tianjian sect's deacons. Deacon Qi was also among them. The other 7 youths were the Tianjian sect's disciples. Apart from Hang Chen, Yin Feiyang, and Ran Donglai, who wore blue robes, the other 4 wore white robes. They were clearly inner sect disciples. Seeing Han Xiaosheng and the others climb to the summit, the Tianjian sect's deacons cupped their fists and greeted them. Although the grudges between the 2 sects were difficult to resolve, they still had to act on the surface. Han Xiaosheng and Du Wu suppressed their anger and expressionlessly cupped their fists in return. Then, they led the 10 disciples up the platform. The Tianjian sect's people stood on the north side of the dragon viewing platform, while the Sky Pillar sect's people stood on the south side. The 2 factions were separated by dozens of meters, sizing each other up. Hang Chen, Yin Feiyang, and Ran Donglai all had confident looks on their faces. There was even a mocking sneer on their faces. A few days ago, when they were at the Sky-bearing sect, they had purposely restrained their arrogance and pretended to be polite and well-mannered. However, this wasn't the Sky Pillar sect, but Dragon Mountain, the territory of the Tianjian sect. Hang Chen and the other 2 naturally did not need to disguise themselves. They all revealed their true arrogant faces. Their gazes when looking at Ji Tianqing and the others were also filled with contempt. Not long after, a fiery red bird as huge as a mountain flew over from the distant horizon. The fiery red bird flew to the peak of Dragon Mountain and landed below the dragon viewing platform. The 2 purple-robed men on the back of the bird leaped onto the dragon viewing platform. The 2 people who had come were the 2 elders of the Sky Pillar sect. The middle-aged man was an outer elder, Chu Huaishan. The other white-haired, purple-robed elder was the great elder, Mu Yunhai. Seeing the arrival of the 2 elders, Han Xiaosheng and the others hurriedly bowed in salute. The elders, deacons, and disciples of the Tianjian sect also cupped their hands in salute. The four elders exchanged greetings as they stood in the middle of the dragon viewing platform and talked about today's Dragon Mountain tournament. Ji Tianqing silently listened to the four elders' conversation. Only then did he know the identities of the two Tianjian sect elders. One of them was an outer elder surnamed Tang, while the other was an elder of the discipline hall. At this time, the four elders finished talking about the tournament. Great Elder Mu Yunhai looked at the two Tianjian sect elders and asked with a solemn expression, "When our sect was in charge of Dragon Mountain, it was covered with herb gardens. The scenery was so beautiful. In just 3 short years, your noble sect has actually destroyed Dragon Mountain to such an extent. Do you want to destroy this precious land?" The two Tianjian sect elders had clearly expected that the Sky Pillar sect would make things difficult for them. The two had already prepared an explanation. The discipline hall elder immediately cupped his hands in salute to Mu Yunhai and said with a sigh, "Elder Mu, please calm down. Our sect also has its own difficulties. Our sect is not like your noble sect. Not only does it have 1,000 years of heritage, but it also controls the entire Tianshan region and has endless resources. Our sect's heritage is weak, and we have very few spirit veins and precious lands. The cultivation resources we produce every year are simply not enough to make ends meet. It is difficult to guarantee the daily necessities of our disciples. Therefore, in order to maintain the cultivation needs of our disciples, our sect can only do its best to extract resources. Please understand, Elder Mu." Elder Master Tang also added, "Of course, we did not wish for Dragon Mountain to become what it is today. If your noble sect dislikes Dragon Mountain, why not give it to our sect? This tournament will also end here. This way, the harmony between the two sects will not be damaged." Without waiting for him to finish, Lu Yunhai angrily shouted with a gloomy expression, "Impossible. You want our sect to hand over Dragon Mountain? Don't even think about it. Even if Dragon Mountain is destroyed, it is still a place with spirit veins and precious lands. After our sect takes over, it will only take 12 years to restore it." The Tianjian sect's elder Master Tang and the discipline elder were not angry, but they both smiled disapprovingly. If Elder Mu thinks so, then I'm afraid you will be disappointed today. This old man has something to say. I hope Elder Mu does not mind. Your sect's disciples participating in the tournament are really weak. It will be as difficult as ascending to the heavens to defeat our sect's 3 genius disciples." The two elders echoed each other, and their brows were filled with pride. Mu Yunhai and Chu Huaishan were so angry that their faces turned cold. Mu Yunhai frowned and said in a low voice, "This seat is too lazy to argue with you. Let the disciples fight in the arena." Then, Mu Yunhai waved his sleeves and turned to Han Xiusheng and the others. The Tianjian sect's discipline elder went back to the team as well. Only the outer elders of the two sects were left on the stage. Chu Huaishan and the Tianjian sect's elder Master Tang would be hosting the Dragon Mountain tournament together. Elder Master Tang was the first to speak. He said a lot of high-sounding words, explaining the origin and meaning of the Dragon Mountain tournament. After he finished, Chu Huaishan announced the rules in a loud voice. To put it simply, the tournament would be held in a best-of-3 format. No pets or external forces were allowed to be used during the matches. Apart from the fact that no one was allowed to kill the other, any kind of injury or disability could occur before one side admitted defeat. After Chu Huaishan announced the rules of the large competition, Hang Chen stared at Ji Tianqing with a mocking sneer in his eyes. Ji Tianqing had already guessed that Hang Chen was up to no good. He didn't think much of the strange look in Hang Chen's eyes. Anyways, from the moment he decided to participate in the Dragon Mountain tournament, he had thought about all the possible consequences. At the same time, Elder Master Tang announced in a loud voice, "The Dragon Mountain tournament has officially begun. Disciples of the two sects, please get ready to decide the participants for the first round." Chapter 193. Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang looked at each other. Neither of them was in a hurry to get on the stage. On the Tianjian sect side, the disciplinary elders, deacons, and disciples all smiled confidently. They seemed to have a card up their sleeves. Hang Chen and the other two didn't even need to discuss. They had already decided on the order of battle. When Elder Master Tang's voice fell, Ran Donglai, who had the lowest strength, took the lead and walked out of the crowd to the center of the dragon platform. Elder Master Tang immediately announced, in the first round, the Tianjian sect's Ran Donglai will fight. Chu Huaishan turned his head to look at Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang, waiting for them to decide on the order of battle. Lu Mingyang saw that Ran Donglai was the first to appear. He immediately smiled and said to Ji Tianqing, "Let me go first." Then, without waiting for Ji Tianqing's agreement, he ran to the center of the dragon platform. Chu Huaishan immediately announced loudly, in the first round, the Sky Pillar sect's Lu Mingyang will fight. The first round of battle began. Chu Huaishan and Elder Master Tang retreated to the edge of the dragon platform and stared at the two people in the field. Ran Donglai stood calmly in the field with his sword on his back. He looked at Lu Mingyang with a smile and said, "Junior brother Lu, we meet again." Ha! Lu Mingyang squeezed out a smile. He didn't want to talk to Ran Donglai, so he quickly took out a silver ball. He held the silver ball in his palm and poured a majestic amount of true essence into it. Suddenly, the silver ball lit up with a dazzling silver light and turned into a set of shining silver armor, covering his whole body. This set of armor not only covered his body, but also a pair of combat boots and a helmet, completely covering his entire body. Even the eye area of the helmet was protected by a layer of silver wire. In the blink of an eye, Lu Mingyang turned into a silver-armored giant. He was about 2 meters tall. Seeing this scene, the disciples of the Wind Cloud Academy didn't feel mighty at all. Instead, their expressions were a bit strange. As for the disciples of the Tianjian sect, they were already convulsing with laughter. Even the deacons and disciplinary elders could not help but chuckle to themselves. Ran Donglai couldn't help but laugh. He looked at Lu Mingyang playfully and teased, "Junior brother Lu, you are well prepared. When I saw you transform into an armored giant, I was scared witless. I was intimidated by your domineering aura and couldn't help but want to admit defeat." Ha ha ha. Of course, Lu Mingyang knew that everyone was mocking him. But he endured the humiliation, holding a golden sword with both hands and staring coldly at Ran Donglai. "Senior brother Ran, fighting in the arena depends on strength, not on bickering. Bring it on. Let me see what you have to be so arrogant." Ran Donglai immediately retracted his smile and pulled out a black sword from his back. His fighting spirit soared, and a powerful aura burst out from his body. "Junior brother Lu, I won't stand on ceremony then. The 7-killing swordsmanship that I used on the square of your sect that day was just an entry-level move. Now, I will let you see the real 7-killing swordsmanship." Ran Donglai held his sword with both hands and rushed toward Lu Mingyang. His whole body was bursting with killing intent. First kill, broken bones. Ran Donglai rushed in front of Lu Mingyang and slashed down with his sword with a roar. The black sword burst out with a sword light that was nearly 2 meters long and broke out with a power that could split mountains and rivers. It slashed toward Lu Mingyang. Just in time. Lu Mingyang was not to be outdone. He shouted with high morale and slashed out 3 sword lights. The sword lights of both sides collided instantly and burst out with a muffled bang. 2 of the 3 sword lights that Lu Mingyang had slashed out were broken by Ran Donglai's sword. The remaining sword light also missed its target. Ran Donglai continued to charge and slashed his sword toward Lu Mingyang again. His murderous aura almost condensed into a wind. Third kill, heart execution. 3 powerful sword lights flashed with cold light and shrouded Lu Mingyang's figure on the spot. The powerful murderous aura and terrifying power made Lu Mingyang's eyes widen. His face was full of dread. Unfortunately, he was wearing a helmet and others could not see the change in his expression. At the critical moment, he retreated while brandishing his sword and slashing out sword lights all over the sky to resist with all his strength. Bang bang bang. The sword lights all over the sky collided violently and burst out with a muffled sound again. Lu Mingyang's sword lights were all slashed into pieces and splashed in all directions. Ran Donglai's murderous aura became more and more turbulent. He strode toward Lu Mingyang with an indomitable spirit and an unparalleled posture. Fourth kill, soul severing. The black sword once again slashed out 4 sword lights with terrifying power and shrouded Lu Mingyang's figure. Lu Mingyang was weaker than Ran Donglai in terms of momentum and fell into a disadvantage from the first exchange. He was shocked by Ran Donglai's violent murderous aura and did not dare to face Ran Donglai's fatal attack head-on. Seeing the 4 sword lights slashing toward him, he could only continue to retreat and slash out 18 sword lights to resist desperately. Bang bang bang, in a series of muffled sounds, Lu Mingyang's sword lights were all slashed and shattered. 3 of Ran Donglai's 4 sword lights were also shattered. And the 4th sword ray finally hit Lu Mingyang, ruthlessly slashing at his armor. Clang! In the deafening sound of metal clashing, Lu Mingyang was sent flying by the sword and fell to the ground 3 meters away. A deep indentation appeared on the left shoulder of the silver armor. It was clearly damaged. Fortunately, the armor blocked the sword, so Lu Mingyang was not injured. His face was pale with fright. Seeing Ran Donglai rushing over with murderous aura, he could not help but break out in cold sweat. Damn it! How can Ran Donglai be so powerful? Is this his real strength? At the same time, Ran Donglai rushed in front of him and once again slashed out 5 sword lights. 5th kill, earth-splitting. Lu Mingyang dodged again and waved his sword to resist. Bang 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 bang. Clang. After a series of muffled sounds, Lu Mingyang was once again sent flying by the sword and rolled 4 meters away. There was also a deep groove in the armor on his chest. Only now did he understand that Ran Donglai's 7-kill swordsmanship was a fierce and violent fighting sword technique. This sword technique used murderous aura to boost its power. It did not pay attention to fancy moves at all. It was to charge forward and destroy everything unstoppably. Moreover, the fiercer the charge, the stronger the murderous aura and sword intent, and the more powerful the sword technique. 6th kill, mountain splitting. Without waiting for Lu Mingyang to get up, Ran Donglai swung his sword again. Without a doubt, Lu Mingyang was unable to block it and was sent flying again. This time, there were 3 more grooves on his silver armor. It had already become tattered and deformed. Although this was a black-level upper-grade armor, Ran Donglai's sword was also a black-level upper-grade weapon. 7th kill, sky-shattering. Ran Donglai roared again and finally used the strongest killing move of the 7 kills swordsmanship. Chapter 194. When Ran Donglai used the last move of the 7 kills swordsmanship, 7 dazzling sword lights shone like the sun. The murderous aura that burst out of his body condensed into a light red gust of wind that whistled and rushed toward Lu Mingyang. Lu Mingyang had long lost his will to fight. When he saw the 7 sword lights and Ran Donglai's blood-red murderous aura, he was immediately scared out of his wits. He had no doubt that as long as Ran Donglai's ultimate move hit him, he would die without a doubt. He might even be beheaded. In this situation, Lu Mingyang could no longer care about his previous plan, let alone the ownership of Dragon Mountain and the honor of his sect. Without hesitation, he held his sword horizontally and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Stop! I admit defeat." When his loud voice spread throughout the dragon viewing platform, Ran Donglai's 7 sword lights were about to hit him. At this critical moment, Ran Donglai couldn't hold back his sword. The 7 kills swordsmanship was too fierce and violent. It focused on advancing murderous aura. However, Ran Donglai's cultivation was still shallow. He hadn't cultivated the 7 kills swordsmanship to the realm of Dashang, so he couldn't control it at will. Seeing that Lu Mingyang had admitted defeat in front of everyone and was about to be killed by Ran Donglai on the spot. At this critical moment, Chu Huaishan frowned and waved his hand, shooting out 2 dark green true essence splendors. Swoosh! One of the 2 dark green true essences turned into a shield to protect Lu Mingyang, and the other turned into a green light wall to block Ran Donglai. Bang! With a muffled sound, the 7 dazzling sword lights hit the green light wall and were all blocked. The first battle was over. Ran Donglai also calmed down and the blood-red murderous aura around him finally dissipated. He put his sword back into the scabbard and looked at the embarrassed Lu Mingyang with a smile. He saluted with his hands folded and said, "Junior brother Lu, thank you for letting me win." Although he didn't say much, he looked down at Lu Mingyang with a contemptuous look that was like a sharp blade that deeply stabbed Lu Mingyang's heart. Lu Mingyang's heart was filled with grief and indignation, but there was nothing he could do. He could only grit his teeth and endure. He snorted coldly. He didn't want Ran Donglai to speak, and he didn't want to see Ran Donglai's smug look. The silver armor was already tattered and distorted, so he took it off and put it away. With a gloomy expression, he returned to the Sky Pillar Sect's group. "Deacon Han, Elder Chu, this disciple has disappointed you." He endured the humiliation and bowed to Han Xiaosheng and Chu Huaishan. Chu Huaishan frowned slightly. His expression did not look good, but he did not say anything. Han Xiaosheng sighed helplessly and nodded. "You've done your best. Don't blame yourself too much." In fact, everyone could see that Lu Mingyang had fallen into a disadvantageous position from the beginning, and the outcome was already decided. After all, he had just advanced to the 2nd level of the Mystic Comprehending stage, while Ran Donglai had already reached the peak of the 2nd level and was about to step into the 3rd level. The first match of the Dragon Mountain tournament ended in a hurry. The Sky Pillar sect had a bad start and lost the first match. This caused the elders, deacons, and several disciples to be shrouded in a layer of haze. They were faintly disappointed and helpless. In everyone's opinion, since Lu Mingyang, who was at the 2nd level of the Mystic Comprehending stage, had been defeated, it was impossible for Ji Tianqing, who was at the 1st level of the Mystic Comprehending stage, to create any miracles. It seemed that the Sky Pillar sect would lose for sure in this Dragon Mountain tournament, and they would not be able to take back Dragon Mountain. The Tianjian sect's people also had the same thought. The 2 elders, deacons, and disciples all revealed smug smiles. In particular, the inner sect disciples were discussing with complacent expressions as they pointed at the Sky Pillar sect's disciples. Their expressions were full of contempt and disdain. At this moment, Elder Master Tang walked to the center of the dragon viewing platform and announced the results of the matches. The Tianjian sect wins the first match. Next, please prepare for the second match. As Elder Master Tang finished speaking, Ran Donglai returned to the group with a smug look on his face. Yin Feiyang walked out from the crowd and stood in the middle of the field with a smile. He looked calm and confident. Elder Master Tang announced loudly, "The second match, the Tianjian sect's Yin Feiyang, will fight." As his voice fell, everyone looked at Ji Tianqing. The Sky Pillar sect only had 2 disciples participating. Lu Mingyang had already been defeated and was not qualified to fight again. Now, only Ji Tianqing was left to fight. Ji Tianqing expressionlessly walked out of the crowd and was about to walk to the center of the field. Chu Huaishan looked at him and solemnly exhorted, "Ji Tianqing, you have to win this match no matter what. Even if our sect loses in the end, at least don't lose too badly." The large tournament was a best-of-3 match system. If Ji Tianqing lost one more match, the large tournament would immediately end. If the Sky Pillar sect lost both matches, they would become the laughingstock of the Tianshan region. Ji Tianqing didn't say anything. He only nodded to Chu Huaishan and then walked to the center of the field. He stood tall and straight in the middle of the field, his left hand holding the black dragon sword and his right hand behind his back. His entire body exuded a calm and composed aura. Yin Feiyang looked at him with a playful expression, the corners of his mouth curling into a smile. Junior apprentice brother Ji, when we were in your sect, I experienced your debating talent. I really admire it. Now that you and I are going to fight, I'm looking forward to seeing if your martial strength is as strong as your debating talent. The people of the Tempest Hall were familiar with Ji Tianqing. They all knew that he was a steady and calm person. He wasn't good at debating and didn't have any eloquence. Yin Feiyang's words were clearly mocking Ji Tianqing's sharp tongue, saying that he only knew how to brag and didn't have any real strength. Ji Tianqing didn't bother to bicker with him. He said expressionlessly, "You'll soon experience my strength." Yin Feiyang did not manage to take advantage of Ji Tianqing, nor did he manage to infuriate Ji Tianqing. He sneered again and said, "Haha, even now, junior brother Ji is still holding on. You're not simple. Since junior apprentice brother Ji is so confident, I'll let you have 2 moves first. Otherwise, you won't even have the chance to draw your sword." Yin Feiyang's words spread throughout the dragon viewing platform, causing an uproar. The disciples and deacons of the Tianjian sect all revealed disdainful sneers. They took pleasure in Ji Tianqing's misfortune, waiting to see him make a fool of himself. In their opinion, with Yin Feiyang's strength at the 3rd stage of profound enlightenment, defeating Ji Tianqing, who was at the 1st stage of profound enlightenment, was as easy as blowing off dust. The people of the Sky Pillar sect were so angry that their faces turned cold. They inwardly cursed Yin Feiyang for being too arrogant and condescending. Even Han Xiaosheng and Chu Huaishan were enraged. They felt that the Sky Sword sect's people were too arrogant. They were too arrogant. Ji Tianqing was still expressionless. He looked at Yin Feiyang indifferently and said calmly, "Since senior apprentice brother Yin is so confident, then I won't be polite." Originally, he wanted to give Yin Feiyang an eye for an eye. He'd said in public that he'd let Yin Feiyang have 3 moves to counterattack and anger him. But after thinking about it, he immediately changed his mind. Wouldn't it be even more humiliating to defeat an arrogant opponent with 1 move? Chapter 195. Junior brother Ji, bring it on. Yin Feiyang sneered disdainfully. He stood calmly in the field without any intention of drawing his sword. He said that he would let Ji Tianqing make 2 moves, so he would only block and dodge. He would not take the initiative to attack. "Take this!" Ji Tianqing shouted in a low voice. A cold light flashed in his eyes. At the same time, he used the shadowless step. His feet moved in a mysterious way, and he rushed toward Yin Feiyang as fast as lightning. He was so fast that he left a few afterimages behind him. In a flash, he rushed 10 meters away and arrived in front of Yin Feiyang. He pulled out the black dragon sword and slashed with all his strength. Dragon soars from the 9th heaven. When the black dragon sword was unsheathed, it shone with a dazzling cold light. It was as if a thunderbolt had torn the night apart. When Ji Tianqing poured his majestic true essence into the black dragon sword, it immediately turned into a huge 3-meter-long sword light. The sword light burst out with a power that could split heaven and earth. It fell from the sky and slashed toward Yin Feiyang. The dazzling sword light condensed into a 9-meter-long black dragon shadow. It emitted a bone-chilling cold. The entire dragon viewing platform was shocked by the power of this sword and trembled slightly. With Ji Tianqing as the center, the air within a radius of 20 meters was squeezed out, making crackling sounds. The power of this sword was so terrifying that the disciples of the two sects were shocked and exclaimed in disbelief. Before the black dragon sword hit Yin Feiyang, he was suppressed by the terrifying sword intent. He could not move an inch. His eyes were full of horror and despair. He instantly forgot what he had just said and subconsciously held the hilt of his sword. He wanted to pull it out and fight back. However, it was too late. Bang! In a deafening sound, the 3-meter-long sword light and the 9-meter-long black dragon shadow drowned Yin Feiyang on the spot. The huge sword light slashed the dragon viewing platform and cut a huge gully in the ground. Countless gravel splashed out. The entire dragon viewing platform trembled violently as if there was a big earthquake. Such astonishing destructive power caused everyone to reveal expressions of disbelief. The people of the Tianjian sect were even more worried. They stared at the chaotic scene in the field, guessing what would happen to Yin Feiyang. After a full 10 breaths of time, the true essence brilliance and the black dragon phantom dissipated, and the dust and gravel that filled the air also settled down. Only then did everyone see the situation clearly. Ji Tianqing held the black dragon sword in his hand and stood proudly in the middle of the field, exuding a confident and calm aura. On the stone floor in front of him, there was a huge crack about 1/2 meter wide and 5 meters long. Yin Feiyang was lying at the side of the rift. His body was trembling, his face was covered in blood, and his hair was disheveled. He was in an extremely sorry state. He was obviously heavily injured, and he struggled with all his might to get up, but he was unable to do so. Ji Tian Xing, you deserve to die. This is impossible. Yin Feiyang raised his head with great difficulty. He raised his blood-stained face and glared at Ji Tianqing with bloodshot eyes. His voice was hoarse, and his words were intermittent. When he opened his mouth to speak, blood kept flowing out of the corners of his mouth. Obviously, his injuries were not only external, but also his internal organs. Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly and said indifferently, "Senior brother Yin, you clearly said that you would let me make 2 moves first, so that I wouldn't even have a chance to draw my sword. This is only the first move. Please keep your word and take my second move." As he spoke, he raised the black dragon sword again. His fighting spirit soared, and he was about to use his second move. Yin Feiyang was suddenly filled with fear, and he felt extremely indignant and humiliated. Just a moment ago, he had been full of pride and disdain for Ji Tianqing, and he had said arrogant words in front of everyone. But now, he had been seriously injured by Ji Tianqing's sword. He didn't even have a chance to draw his sword and counterattack. He had almost died on the spot. How ironic and ridiculous this was. With his current heavily injured body, how could he possibly withstand Ji Tianqing's second attack? Wasn't it obvious that he wanted to kill him? In his grief and indignation, Yin Feiyang actually opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Ji Tianqing turned a blind eye to this. He raised the black dragon sword and looked like he was about to slash down. At the critical moment, Manager Qi of the Tianjian sect quickly jumped out and rushed to Yin Feiyang's side. He glared at Ji Tianqing and shouted in a deep voice, "Ji Tianqing, what are you doing? Are you going to kill someone in front of everyone?" Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently and deliberately mocked him. Yin Feiyang said that he would let me make 2 moves first. What, Manager Qi, are you going to interfere with the competition? Or, Manager Qi, are you going to help Yin Feiyang renege on his debt and be a villain who goes back on his word? Manager Qi's face turned ashen with anger, and his eyes were filled with cold light. However, the deacons and elders of both sects were present, so he could only endure and not flare up. He gnashed his teeth and shouted coldly, "We admit defeat in this round." Only then did Ji Tianqing put away his black dragon sword. He glanced at Deacon Qi with a mocking gaze and said disdainfully, "Wouldn't it have been better if you had admitted defeat earlier?" Why wait until you've been beaten to a pulp before surrendering? You. Manager Qi was so angry that the veins on his forehead bulged, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. If it were another occasion, he would definitely kill Ji Tianqing. However, on the dragon viewing platform, under the watchful eyes of everyone, no matter how much Ji Tianqing humiliated him and Yin Feiyang, he could only endure it. Soon, Manager Qi supported the heavily injured Yin Feiyang and left the stage dejectedly. The faces of the Tianjian sect's people darkened. They glared at Ji Tianqing with hatred and gnashed their teeth. The disciples of the Sky Pillar sect were filled with shock. They revealed excited smiles and shouted while waving their fists. Great! We've won! Ji Tianqing, well done! As expected of the influential figure of our sect. That sword move was too gorgeous and terrifying. Ha ha ha! Clowns of the Tianjian sect, why don't you continue to be arrogant? The first elder, Chu Huaishan, Han Xiaosheng, and the others obviously did not expect this result. They all revealed gratified smiles. Not bad, not bad. Huh, what a good move, dragon soars from the ninth heaven. It really has the momentum of a dragon soaring through the ninth heaven. I didn't misjudge him. This battle alone is enough to make him famous in the ancient realm of the stars. This kid is only at the first stage of the profound comprehending realm, but he can display such terrifying combat strength. It's really incredible. Previously, I thought that the Tianjian sect had no chance of winning with Hang Chen, who was at the fifth stage of the profound comprehending realm. Now it seems that Ji Tianqing may be able to create a miracle. Ji Tianqing listened to the discussions and praises of the crowd, but he was not arrogant or complacent. His expression was still calm and composed. Although he could defeat Yin Feiyang with his own strength without using the Black Dragon sword, he would not be able to achieve such a shocking effect. The little black dragon had lived in the Grand Peace Palace for a month and eaten many spiritual fruits. It had recovered 20% of its strength, which made the Black Dragon sword so powerful. It was also because of this that Ji Tianqing had not chosen a weapon and had only chosen a set of soft armor. How could the profound grade treasured swords in the outer sect's treasury compare to the Black Dragon sword's power? Chapter 196. On the dragon viewing platform, the crowd discussed for a long time. The people of the Tianjian sect were filled with anger and resentment. They glared at Ji Tianqing with murderous intent. The people of the Sky Pillar sect were jubilant. They were proud of Ji Tianqing's easy victory. After a while, Chu Huaishan announced the result of the fight. The Sky Pillar sect wins the second round. Next, both parties, please prepare for the third battle. The third battle was not only the final battle, but also the crucial battle that would determine the outcome of the competition. At the same time, it was also a battle between the strongest outer sect disciples of the two sects. Ji Tianqing was still standing in the field, waiting for the third round. Among the people of the Tianjian sect, Hang Chen walked out with the heavy sword of the setting sun on his back. He looked cold and murderous. Previously, he had disdained Ji Tianqing and didn't put him in his eyes at all. However, after witnessing Ji Tianqing's sword, he no longer underestimated Ji Tianqing and began to view him as a mortal enemy. Bang, 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 Hang Chen walked to the center of the field, neither too fast nor too slow. His heavy footsteps made muffled sounds. He stopped 10 meters away from Ji Tianqing. He stared at Ji Tianqing maliciously and spoke. Junior brother Ji, I didn't expect you to hide your strength so well. To be able to use such amazing swordsmanship. However, no matter how powerful your swordsmanship is, you're only at LV1 of the Tongxian realm. You're no match for me. Since you've met me, you're destined to lose miserably. I'll give you a chance. It's not too late to admit defeat. Otherwise, don't blame my heavy sword of the setting sun for being merciless. Hang Chen's tone was firm, and his eyes were full of confidence. As a martial arts genius, he naturally had the confidence and pride to match. Even though Ji Tianqing had just displayed amazing combat strength, he had only stopped looking down on him and treated him seriously. He was certain that the final result would not change. The victory would belong to him. ALV1 of the Tongxian realm martial artist wanted to defeat a LV5 of the Tongxian realm expert. This was simply the ravings of a lunatic, an absurd delusion. Ji Tianqing looked at Hang Chen calmly and said in an indifferent tone, "I always believe that everything depends on human effort. Nothing is predestined, and nothing is impossible. Hang Chen, I will definitely win this battle, and Long Shan will definitely return to our sect." Hang Chen was very arrogant. Ji Tianqing was also very confident. His tone was also resolute and unquestionable. Hearing his words, Hang Chen immediately frowned. He reached for the heavy sword of the setting sun on his back and grinned coldly. "Junior brother Ji, since you're so confident, it seems that you've already made preparations. If that's the case, then put on the armor you've carefully prepared. Let's see if I can chop you into pieces." Hang Chen gripped the heavy sword of the setting sun with both hands as his entire body emitted a bloody killing intent. His skin became even redder, and his expression became even more ferocious. The blood in his body surged violently, emitting the sound of wind and thunder. It was obvious that he was accumulating terrifying power. There was no doubt that he had stimulated the potential of the battle sword bloodline. He had also begun to go berserk, and his combat strength was rapidly increasing. Seeing this scene, the people of the Tianjian sect secretly clenched their fists, looking forward to the scene of Hang Chen tyrannizing Ji Tianqing. A few disciples also shouted excitedly, cheering for Hang Chen. "Hang Chen, release your killing intent. Let the trash of the Sky Pillar sect experience the power of the battle sword bloodline. Hang Chen will win. Our sect will win." When the people of the Sky Pillar sect saw the changes in Hang Chen's body and aura, their expressions became grave. A few disciples widened their eyes and stared at Hang Chen, their faces filled with worry. Han Qiusheng, Chu Huaishan, and the others also frowned, their hearts filled with worry. In their opinion, Hang Chen's strength was already at the 5th level of the Mystic Enlightening Realm. Now that he had used the power of the battle sword bloodline, his combat strength was close to the 6th level of the Mystic Enlightening Realm. No matter how monstrous Ji Tianqing was, it was impossible for him to surpass 5 levels and defeat Hang Chen. It was no longer a miracle, it was a complete fantasy. At the same time, Hang Chen's aura reached its peak, and his body was surrounded by a layer of light red killing intent. His eyes also turned dark red as he stared at Ji Tianqing and shouted angrily, "Ji Tianqing, die. Battle Blood Manic Sword. Cloud-crushing slash." Hang Chen held the sword of the setting sun with both hands, his whole body emitting blood-red killing intent. He rushed toward Ji Tianqing like a flood, brandishing the sword and slashing out 2 blood-red sword rays. Swoosh! Swoosh! The 2-meter-long sword rays were as wide as half a table. They were blood-red in color and emitted a strong bloody aura. They were extremely violent. The 2 sword rays slashed toward Ji Tianqing from the left and right at an incredible speed, leaving afterimages of the sword rays in the sky. Seeing this scene, the disciples of the Tianjian sect were all excited and exclaimed excitedly, "It's the Battle Blood Manic Sword. Hang Chen is actually using his secret sword technique." Hang Chen didn't use the 7-killing swordsmanship, but directly used his secret sword technique. It seems that he wants to end the battle in a few moves. I bet that Ji Tianqing won't be able to last more than 3 moves under Hang Chen's sword. Ha ha ha, Ji Tianqing must have been shocked by Hang Chen's killing intent. He must have been scared silly. When the disciples of the Tianjian sect saw Ji Tianqing standing in the field expressionlessly, they all thought that he had been scared silly. Then, an even more unbelievable scene occurred. Facing Hang Chen's fierce attack, Ji Tianqing didn't wave his sword to block it. Instead, he put away the black dragon sword. He was facing Hang Chen's attack with his bare hands. Seeing this, the people of the Sky Pillar sect were all surprised and discussed with puzzlement. What is Ji Tianqing doing? Is he going to fight Hang Chen with his bare hands? Isn't this too ridiculous? Not to mention that he's only at the first level of the Mystic Comprehending Realm. Even if he's also at the 5th level of the Mystic Comprehending Realm, it's impossible for him to block Hang Chen. Ji Tianqing was able to defeat Yin Feiyang with one move. In addition to his own strength, his sword is also very powerful. It's obviously not an ordinary sword. Yeah. I really don't know what he's thinking. He actually abandoned his divine weapon and wants to face the enemy with his bare hands. When the disciples of the Tianjian sect saw Ji Tianqing put away his sword, they were all stunned for a moment. Obviously, they hadn't expected this. Then, several disciples came back to their senses and revealed expressions of contempt and disdain as they laughed unscrupulously. Ha ha ha, is this guy's brain flooded with water? He's going to face Hang Chen with his bare hands? This isn't confidence. It's completely throwing an egg against a stone. He's courting death. Hee, it's also possible that Ji Tianqing knows that he's no match for Hang Chen and will definitely lose, so he simply gave up resisting. When I saw him defeat Yin Feiyang with one move, I thought he had some ability and would be able to withstand a few moves from Hang Chen. Now it seems that the outcome has been decided. Longshan still belongs to our Tianjian sect. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.